Welcome to my good bad brain. I'm a normal person, so I'm insane. I've got depression and ADHD, but I'm doing better since I medicated me. I'm still not always sure whether I exist or what being a person even really is, but I figured out a long time ago that being alive is beautiful.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to My Good Bad Brain. If you like the pod, review us on iTunes. That helps out a lot. And also check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/mygoodbadbrain. If you dig it, to support it, keep it alive. Today on My Good Bad Brain is Adam Busch, who is a dear friend of mine. If you ever watched my music, which is something I did a long time ago with the Fine Brothers, I met Adam Busch on that project. And from the moment I met him, I don't know what it was. At first, I thought he didn't like me. And I thought we had this really fun, like, sparry kind of energy. And usually when I have that vibe, I end up finding out that we have a lot in common and that we're very similar people. And Adam has always struck me as that. He's such an artist. He's a brilliant artist. He's a great actor, but he's also a beautiful musician, as you'll find in this pod. One of the questions I asked, I send people the questions I asked at the end ahead of time so they can have a second to think about it. So it's not totally on the spot. And I guess when I asked him something dark about him, he he ended up writing a whole song, and it's really beautiful. I've listened to it a lot. It's actually stuck in my head. He plays it at the end of this episode, which is like just such an amazing treat. I'm feeling a little disconnected right now. I have horrible neck pain, which sounds so stupid, but like it's all I can think about. So this is gonna be a little brief today. I'm just gonna let our sort of our long. It's very hearkening to the early days of My Good Bad Brain. The early days are only like 3 months in, but you know, very meandering and lovely and very for me. We actually joke about it and talk about it, not joking, how this podcast is very much apt to its name, My Good Bad Brain. They're interviews and conversations, but you're really getting them bounced through my brain. It's very much about that, for better or for worse. And on that note, I do have some ideas for the next coming interviews I'm going to do, the next round of them. And I'm curious to see what you guys think. It's basically to shift it to make us a little bit more mental health focused and less like just Jarrett's brain focused, I guess. Yeah, I got a brain breather coming up for people on Patreon. I'll get it first. Everyone else will get it later. I went home last week, and I think I'm still experiencing the fallout of that. Like home for the first time in like 10 years. And it was so strange. And I'll expand on it, you know, in the brain breather. But yeah, forgive me. I'm just like a little, I don't know if you ever had this like insane pain, and it's like kind of all I can think about, and I have no idea what happened. Maybe jujitsu, I don't know, just rolling around. Anyway, my dumbass, good fucking bad brain. Here, I'm back, right? We're going to start this interview now. And I hope you enjoy as much as I did my meandering talk. What do we talk? I mean, we talk about all kinds of stuff. Anxiety, ADHD stuff. We talk about Batman and Superman. We talk a lot about like the artist and society and, you know, narrative and how that rules us or not. And a lot, what I talked to Adam about, what I've always been so impressed about, the thing that's very different from me, even though I feel like there's a similar energy that we live under. Adam has like character control of a sort, like that I ask him very explicitly about. It translates to a very personal power, I believe, when I'm with him. There's like a coolness, and that's like Adam just seems so cool all the time. Like there's this reserved quality that he has, and when I get to talk to him, he's like just as passionate and crazy as me in some ways, but he is able to not give it all away immediately. And I mean, you'll hear like how we start this off, just both of us having that problem when someone asks, you know, how you're doing, like. Mine is I tell them, and sometimes that's more than people want to know. And his thing is like realizing that, you know, that question's much bigger than people seem expected to answer. And you can make it weird when you go as big as the question is. How are you doing? Anyway, let's segue into it. So I hope you enjoyed this lovely convo about being a person with one of my favorite people, Adam Busch. Thanks. Bye. I just think it's undeniable that when you roll up a lot of experiences, you just start to go like, oh, okay, that's like your first heartbreak is like the world's ending. And then the second one's still pretty fucking bad. But you're like, oh, it didn't kill me last time, you know?
I mean, I've read about it.
Sure. Yeah, that's you. Definitely.
It was really just something that my chorus teacher in elementary school used to make us say in unison, and I hated it. She would say, "Good morning, boys and girls. Good morning, Mrs. Lark. How are you?" She'd say, "Better and better, thank you. How are you, boys and girls?" And we would all say, "Better and better, thank you," like in unison. And I hated it. But I haven't come up with a better response to "How are you" since then. Because normally whatever I say, the response I'll get is, "What?"
Yeah.
I don't want that. That's the worst thing.
When you say better and better and they say what?
No, if I don't say that, if I say anything else, if somebody's like, "How are you?" If I'm not using that, if I go, "Oh, fine," or "I'm okay," they're like, "What?"
That's funny.
But now I say better and better, and everybody's pleasantly surprised.
That's interesting. Yeah. Do you think when people ask that, how you doing? I guess a lot of time they don't really mean.
I've never been good at it, and I used to actively not believe in it and think it was bullshit until I got a dog, and then I learned, oh, this is like a thing we have to do. This is no different than the way they have a little process where they sniff and they check.
Oh,
and
that's good.
They do the eyes, make sure the eye contact thing's all right. Then we move around, and then we're good. Like, that's what it is. How are you is, are you crazy?
Yeah.
And you have to say, no, I'm not crazy. It's a beautiful day today. How are you?
Right.
And you go, okay, we can do that.
It's like, yeah, just a normalcy test. Do you know how to do this dance? Do you know how to just
Right.
answer the pleasantries
For our
correctly?
safety, I guess, for our own. Because if it's the most difficult question to actually answer to even your best friend,
Yeah.
let alone a perfect stranger, like, how are you?
Yeah.
Take a minute, check in, tell us, how are you?
It's very hard to answer. I remember having a moment in therapy years ago that was like a big wake up moment for me where my therapist said, you know, how you feeling? Like just as like, how you
And
feeling?
you just start crying.
Basically,
Yeah.
kind of. Because I sat there and I just said, I don't know. And I tried to and I realized I couldn't feel my body. Like I couldn't feel below my neck, you know? That I was like, I don't know. I couldn't tell you, you know? Like with the question of how are you feeling? And I was like, I don't think I can really feel my physical feelings. You know, there was like a disconnect. You know, there's this idea that like your body stores trauma that like,
Tension.
you know? Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, you told me a story once about a masseuse encounter that you had, not like that kind of a masseuse, which I didn't realize, I guess, is like somebody told me that online, like, please don't use the word masseuse, like I just thought it was a word for a massage person, but they
Body
said
rubber?
What?
Body rubber? What do they want to be called?
No, yeah, like physical body
therapist.
worker. I think body worker is,
They prefer body workers?
I think body worker and something else, maybe physical therapist or something like that, but that masseuse had like overtones of like a sex worker or something like that.
See, to me, body worker sounded...
It sounds a little more, yeah, I don't know, body worker. But like you told me about somebody who you were like got a massage and you were like amazed that they were pressing at a spot in your back and you were almost gonna be like, what the fuck are you doing? Stop, please stop, because it hurt.
She took two fingers right in between my shoulder blades and just started. It wasn't massaging or pleasant at all. It was just two fingers as hard as they could pressing in. And I started, and then I said, stop. And what was so incredible was that she didn't listen to me. She knew, even against my wishes. And it did. After a minute, something went, and my whole body collapsed and I started laughing and crying at the same time.
Yeah, it's weird.
It was something was stored in there that she knew.
Did you ever did you like investigate that and try to think of like what you were putting there? Did you feel different?
I'm pretty sure that whatever I put in there, I've now doubled since then.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's real. I don't know. I've been thinking about that stuff a lot. Like it's weird, like new pains that we're earning from like technical things, like our thumbs work all the time on usually your dominant hand. And this came with my mom, like, and because my mom's like knows a lot about body stuff, she's yoga person, all this stuff, and that it just travels right up, like it's all connected. It's right at the crook of your elbow, and then it goes up into your shoulder, and it's in the back of your neck and in your head, all from your thumb, just doing this thing all day that our body didn't do for all these years. And I kind of feel like there's if you can store traumas in this like an energetic or like an emotional experience can be lock up something physically, then kind of like the way if you fake smiling, it'll make you feel happier sometime, like that we can create trauma feelings like depression, anxiety, or whatever from a lockup. So if we're doing this with our thumb all day and it's creating this like thing where we're clenching all the time in the back of our neck in this little way, you're literally interfering with the nervous system traveling up and down your spine, and that can like inhibit your feeling of well-being in a very real, practical way. I don't know, it's just weird to think about. I mean, I think humanity is such a petri dish right now of like mechanical systems with just the phone. I've said this a few times on here probably, but like that I've just been realizing that when I look at my phone for a certain amount of, like, it's just a belt sander to my frontal cortex. It just feels like it's just grinding down my like well-being or humanity, and I think it's doing it to everyone.
And I think you can add to that, like, anything you don't deal with emotionally is stored physically. Like there's somewhere in your body that you are holding it in.
I definitely think that's true.
And until you deal with it, and you can see it, how people sit and stand and where their voice is, if it's high or low or pinched or like where it's at. Sometimes just facial tension makes people's voices very different. Yeah.
I'm gonna steer it a little bit towards you off of that, because one of the things I want to talk about with you, I mean, it's weird because some people I talk to on here, I don't have such a natural, like we go pretty deep and wild. I'm experiencing this right now. It's like we have conversations that just go normally.
This is borderline incoherent. You understand that?
Of course.
Like to anybody,
this is what it is.
Not in the room.
Maybe we'll find out. But it's almost like now that and other people, there's because I talked to you before, like there's this artifact quality. It's like now we're recording it, and so now we're gonna have a talk. And some people that we experienced this on My Music when we first met. We would have this epiphany about like, because you and I both came from traditional acting backgrounds, and a lot of people came from the YouTube one. And this thing would happen where camera would turn on to do the scenes, and you and I would just be like doing our scenes, doing our thing, no big deal. And everyone else would be kind of like, But then the behind the scenes cameras would come out, and you and I would be like, what the fuck is going on? And everyone else would be like, I'm a person now. I'm the real me. Yeah. And now I'm feeling like that's happening a little bit with like, I've got to remember to interview you a little bit. You know what I mean?
I've tried to institute a rule where I don't chit chat before the podcast. Usually, if I don't know them.
That's
because
I've been doing the opposite, because especially if I haven't seen them in a while, like to loosen up, kind of like we get into a flow. It's kind of funny because I think you and I just have such a natural flow that like didn't need to do that, but it was just fun. It was good for me.
I remember when I was a kid, I did a bit on the Howard Stern radio show in New York, and I was a big fan.
Yeah.
But like the way they were in the commercial break, the recording light would just go on, and you didn't know, and they just continued without stopping. Like it was exactly how it was.
What do you mean? I don't know if I get what you're saying. Like while the commercial break's going on, it would just keep recording, you mean?
How they're talking to each other when the commercials would stop and they'd go back on.
Going.
It was seamless. There was no acknowledgement that the light had gone on, and the conversation didn't shift at all.
Well, I do think that his show, especially when it was like new, and that was the quality of it that was so remarkable, was the feeling that they were literally just there talking to each other,
and it was not manufactured at all.
Which is what would get people to have these like outrageous scenes that came from the Howard Stern show, was just because I think he probably creates a vibe in there for the people that are like, no, it's just us doing this talk, you know, and you forget that there's like a billion people listening or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I was thinking about like, okay, so you're an actor, and you're also a singer, and you've done that musician thing your whole life. So you're very familiar with your body being different things, like different things taking it over, and that what it speaks. And something I've always been struck by with you from when I first met you was like this kind of, you have a containment, and like your voice is, you have a voice, you speak in a way that has always forced me to like lean in, and other people have to, you create like a space for them to come into, and you're never gonna like come out and try to grab them. You know what I mean? Like you'll leave an invitation.
It sounds accurate. I've never thought
but
about
you'll never, you know, and I have always been really in awe of that. I always felt that you were just like so jazzy. Like you're just like this vibe of coolness that I envied, you know, because I've always felt my whole life very about like, I gotta make people like me. I'm gonna go get them. I'm gonna be funny in front of them. If I'm gonna be cool, it's an active kind of like cool, you know, like, and the ability to trust that you're just whatever you are is what you are. And I'm just curious about that because that's how I perceive it. As I've gotten to know you more, I've realized we had more in common in our processes and our receiving of the world in terms of thinking about everything a million miles a minute and, you know, whatever.
We can invite each other to anything.
Yeah.
You're someone
100%.
I never have to worry about whether you'll enjoy it or if you know what it is. Like, we're both up for anything.
Which is a really special quality. I'm glad that you have, because that is true. That's the worst feeling is like,
I'm happy finding the one thing I liked or that moved me in an entire piece, just one thing. Mm-hmm. And I feel grateful I was there.
But do you feel that way about like your life? Like the way you approach reality? Meaning, I'm sorry if that's like too broad, but I mean like that, what you just said, and I don't know if you were meaning to answer the question when you were saying it, but is sort of my perception of you is like, you will find one small thing in a whole, like we met on this show, My Music, that was ridiculous. Like the whole experience. And I remember being with you like, why are you doing this? You know, cause you didn't, you know, you are an established actor doing all these bigger shows and stuff all the time since you were a kid. And so I was like, why are you doing this thing for like no money that we don't even know what it is? And I think your answer was sort of along the lines of like, this is the future and this is interesting and this is different. And you wanted to, there's a quality of like, you just want to go see. Like you'll find one thing. Mm-hmm. Tell me more. It
was that bit. It was finding out that like actors are actors, newscasters are newscasters. You wouldn't necessarily want to see Sean Penn read the news, but he's a great actor. It's a different skill.
Yeah.
YouTube is a different skill. Looking at the camera and immediately making it a person is its skill. It's its own skill. And I certainly, as you mentioned, don't have that. Like you put the camera on just me and I'm not quite sure what to do. I can fine with a script. But if I have to be me, I don't quite know what that is enough to just make the other person feel comfortable and make the camera a person.
Did you ever feel like you wanted to try cultivating that?
That's why I did it.
Do you think
that's why I'm doing this with you now?
Really?
100%. I want to get to the point where I listen to myself on something and I don't regret anything I say. And I'd rather be more careful with my words and say less than hear myself just being agreeable or maybe going to some point that I don't stand by or that I think back on and go, oh, that's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I think that's a good quality to have. I was talking about this with one of the listeners, Terry, was like saying that we had a conversation about something and they were like, some people think to talk and some people talk to think, you know, think like to think. And I'm very much, I talk to think. Like I have to say things out loud to know if I believe them sometimes.
I'm hyper aware of what's going on with whoever's around me and 100% unaware of my own basic feelings and needs. Like I'll be hungry and I don't know why. But if I'm talking to someone and they're not interested or engaged, I can't continue. I'll just trail off. But other people you notice when they're talking, you're like, you don't see how disinterested I am, or you're not responding at all to me looking away or checking the time. Like, oh, you do see it. You just don't care. You don't need me to be engaged. You're just talking. And that's something else.
That is interesting. I don't know, that maybe there's something tied to like a theater thing for me. And I was thinking like theater's a really weird art form to choose because you can't go do it alone in a room. Like you need an audience. Really, all you need to do theater is an audience and a space. Like you can't just go act by yourself.
I'll take it further. You can work on your one-man show and you can perform it by yourself, but a comedian can't do that. A comedian needs someone there.
That's true.
To just practice.
Yeah.
Otherwise, how do you know?
Well, because I mean, so I was like, you know, because if you paint something or make a piece of music and record or something, it has its own thing. But that there is a quality I was joking about it recently, just because as things get crazier, I tweeted something about it, like that my favorite thing to do is corner my best friends with like psychotic screeds. and like I did it to a friend. I was recently doing this sketch show Betch, and they're just wonderful, and the friends were at lunch. I'm talking to my friend Maddie, and like and I was going on and on about like what I thought God was or something, and I don't know where. It was just because of the news. It was because of something. And she goes like, I don't know what you've said for the last minute and a half. And I just said, I'm so sorry. Thank you. And it's interesting because sometimes I do think the person not listening is a matter of them. They don't give a shit about the person in front of them. Sometimes in my lived experience, I very much care, but I've just disappeared. Like I've gone into like a fugue state of something, and it's not a true, like, it never feels like absorbed with my experience, but it feels like I'm just disappeared. Like the thought is I have to work it out, and I don't know how to work it out inside. It has to be outside somewhere. And I have, doing this actually, before we started doing it, I started practicing talking alone, because I realized I could do it when I would have conversations, but I couldn't be with myself, which then comes back to that thing of like, well, how you feeling?
It's exactly what it comes back to. And it comes back to, if you have to say it out loud to figure it out,
yeah,
that's because you need another person there to see how they feel about it. And you're not maybe trusting your own.
I think that's true. Because I think I just don't trust my own humanity or something like that. Like I rely very much on this like interconnected humanity feeling. And also I guess like without people to make it relevant to, like you're saying with the check-in, the smell each other's butts thing that we have to do as people to make sure that we're sane. There's like, I do have a feeling often of like estrangement from reality and from humanity in my body and this person. And so I have to check in and be like, does this make sense to you? Do you hear this? Does this resonate with you? Which is then why when I hear in art or other people, and when I have these conversations or just hear them talk, and you have that experience of your thoughts coming out of someone else's mouth, it's so like, oh, okay. Oh, we're just people. Okay, good.
Absolutely. When I was at my lowest and everyone around me was aware of it, it was the one person who seemed to kind of care the least, who was just like, oh yeah, I've been through that. That's the worst. Yeah, it took me like a year to recover from that. I was like, immediately set free. Like oh
yeah.
My God, that's all. And they still have no idea what they casually said, the impact that had.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, you ever feel like, so I was like, oh yeah, it happens. And you're like, thank God.
Yeah, I mean,
but those are extreme cases.
I have to think about those examples too sometimes of like, you just fall in love with someone on the street. They have no idea you exist or whatever. And they'll never, there's no way they could. They walked past you and you fell in love for a moment. I think sometimes it's nice to think like someone's done that with you. Someone's fallen in love with you, like without you knowing, and you'll never know each other. You walk past and they fell in love with you for a moment.
Absolutely. However, I'm pretty sure that never happened.
I think you're wrong.
I was walking
for sure
into Office Depot at noon, wearing an army jacket and a beard. I might have had the hood up, and I was going to get ink for the printer. Mm-hmm. And a family was coming out as I was walking in, mother, father, son, daughter, and I saw the mother, as we passed each other, just slightly pull the child in to her and away from me. And I thought to myself, that's good parenting.
Yeah.
That's a smart instinct.
I when I see mothers and children together, I like think of it like bears. Like I try to not get between them, like very unconsciously. This happened the other day where like I was walking into a place, and it was like sort of that like ingress egress, like a public place, and the door was just kind of open and people are going in and out, and this woman, her kids or toddlers had like skipped ahead, and they like ran in the door, and I just waited like a few moments because like, well, I'm not gonna walk in after these. I just think that's so funny. I think that's the dog thing too. It's always funny to see like these animal traits in ourselves play out, even though we have these like high functioning brains and all these other complicated things about being a person. Like the animal truths like never really go away.
No, and there's so many more we haven't even learned yet. They're all just sitting there. It's crazy.
Well, maybe that's, I don't know. That's all part of it with me, with you, is there's like, you have a personal power in your presence that is like unreadable to me, that I was like very surprised and relieved and like when I got to know you more, and I would feel like sometimes I don't know, something will happen. You're very calm, and then I'll ask some question. What do you think about this thing or that thing? And then it'll be there, like all of the all the huge feelings, and it's like a weird, great relief to me. But I'm also very impressed at like that personal collection or something, that personal control.
I think it comes from. I've met other people who have this, where there's two choices. There's two options. One is I'm gonna dominate. I'm gonna run this thing, and
right?
Or I'm gonna sit back, and I'll wait until I'm needed. And I guess I just found over time, either I wasn't getting the reaction I wanted from dominating, or I was just made to feel insecure about it, or it was always more effective to let other people give their opinions first, because I know I'm going to have a strong one, and it's not going to be affected probably by what everyone says. If I go first, now it's them against me. But if I wait, well, here's another option, guys. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I hang back a little bit. But it breaks my heart to think about what you said, because, I guess I really am that person who's like, well, you didn't ask. And I'll hold it in forever. But if you ask, I'll tell you. And be like, well, why didn't you just, because you didn't ask?
It's funny.
And that's not fair.
I think because when I met you, like I thought you like just didn't like me. I thought we had like a little bit of a sparring thing when we first met. And then once, I don't know what happened. I don't know what I said or what it was, but I remember making you laugh at some point, and it was your very like explosive, like you have these small explosions of laughter. And then I was like, oh, cool. I was like, I guess what I think is interesting about it is like, because we've become friends, like, and I don't know, it feels like more like I don't know, this interview is funny. This is like a different one, but it feels, it's very interesting. I don't know, maybe I'm just getting some stuff out, but it felt like you're the cool kid. And then like, for whatever reason, it doesn't even feel, it feels like physics. It feels like something about the way you, I want to say withhold, but I don't think you're doing it conscious. Maybe you are, is like makes me want approval. And I see other people around it with you too, like wants you to like it. And like to have passed through that and gone like, oh, well now we're just like people who see each other and we know more about each other. So that's a little bit diffused. And to look back and go like, it's like you're a different person to me now. At some point we crossed through a threshold, and whoever that figure was, I can still recognize him in you. I don't know. I guess I'm so fascinated by that power, because it is a personal.
Well, this taps into what you've been talking about a lot on your podcast, and what we've been talking about, and which is those things that we're insecure about or trying to hide or get rid of are probably the best things about us.
Ooh.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if I'm like, I think it was I took classes at Strasbourg with Al Pacino when I was like a teenager, because he would give this masterclass. And I remember how short he was. And I remember that he didn't know he was short. And he would speak in this way, and people would bend into him to hear. And there was one time he was standing next to this very tall actor named Richard Cox, and this guy's like bending, he's hunched over to hear what this guy's saying, because this guy is not going to project for you. You're going to lean into him. He made being short cool. He made it the desirable thing in the room. I wish I was down there so I could hear everything. Like,
whoa, yeah.
Whatever we're embarrassed of is probably our best quality. And if we feel something strongly, there's no reason we shouldn't say it.
Man, that's like a lesson. I don't know. I mean, we're all doomed to learn the exact same thing over and over again.
Over and over.
But fuck that one. That one about just when you listen to that thing in you that's truly yours. Like, I mean, I say a lot of very glibly these days, like, especially in the age of the internet, there's a lot of people with mistaking opinions for points of view. And that like an opinion gets thrown out there in the feed. Someone will open their mouth to say something, and I go, oh, I read that article too. You know what I mean? You start to like feel that way. We all just, oh, I get it. I know what you're supposed to think. I know your opinion that was given to you by someone with an opinion. But like to hear an opinion, to hear a million opinions, and then like go from your, I always love the term point of view, because it's a literal vantage point, like this physical space to say like, where are you viewing this from, is so hard to check in with and actually to feel, to like know your thoughts and then to speak them. But anytime you can, I don't think it's like if you pretend that you're speaking from a place of point of view and it becomes very evident quickly that it's not, that it's somebody else's ideas or thoughts or something that you thought was clever but not true to you, it's like repulsive. But if you can speak from that true point of view of your actual feelings and your actual truth, it's almost always rewarded, like with some response that it resonates with people in a way that's like, whatever, what you're saying, more of whatever that is, please.
Yeah.
You know?
I programmed documentaries for this film festival, and I've never made a documentary in my life.
Yeah.
The first year I was a programmer, I remember it was me and all these documentary filmmakers, and we had all watched some films, and we were getting together to have a meeting, and the head of the documentary department's first thing they said was, okay, Adam, you gave this film a 10, and everyone else gave it a 0 and killed it. What's up with that? So I explained to them how this film called You're Looking at Me Like I Live Here, But I Don't. How it just moved me. I couldn't really explain why. They explained to me that it had no plot, it had no point, it was just like home movie sliced together with no real purpose, and that it wasn't even a film. They had made documentary films. I had not. This was my first year. I said, okay, got it. You guys are right. I'm learning. I ended up checking up on that film a year or two later, and it had become the official film for the disease of Alzheimer's. If you go to alzheimers.com, the first thing it says is, if you or a loved one have been diagnosed with this disease, the first thing you need to do is watch this film, You Are Looking at Me Like I Live Here, But I Don't, and learn what life is like from their perspective, which is everything I saw in the film. PBS bought it, BBC bought it. It has had such a huge life and done so much good. I'm now the head of programming there, and I've been doing it for like 8 years. And every year, it's the only reason I do it is so I can meet the new programmers and tell them this story. And then I just want to go. I don't really want to program anymore. I just want to tell them this story and go, so don't listen to anyone. Don't listen to a great filmmaker. I don't care if you have no experience. If you feel something, you fight for it because you will know what's best. And there's no reason to ever sure, learn things, but if you have a feeling, like you're saying, learn how to express it the best you can, because that's enough and it's valid.
I heard someone once say like that about America, like that we're like, America's really bad at preventing disaster and really good at dealing with it. Like, I don't know if that's true anymore, but like that once something was broken.
That sounds about right, because that sounds like me.
That's what it made me think of what you were saying.
And I'm American.
I think we're all quite American, good and bad. And like if you're here, I mean, I think about that all the time. Like America, we are really truly all descended from just like criminals and maniacs, and it's you weirdos. It's true, and that's why we're so. And
all the things that are strengths we call weaknesses. All the expressions of sensitivity and of empathy are considered weakness and not strength, and that's backwards. And
completely.
It's taken advantage of. To people that are competitive or people that are not empathetic, like they just assume the rest of the world is like them. Like, and if you're allowing them to have something over you, you must have a real you're playing long ball now. Like they'll never ever believe that you are just being selfless.
No,
it's not an option available.
Well, I always think that's funny, like because people love to do this thing about like that there's no altruism, that there's like, well, anything you can trace back to like, well, if you're doing something nice for someone, at the very least, it's because it makes you feel good to do something nice. And I always drew great like contention with that. I was like,
possible,
I was like, it's
not
possible,
always
but
the case.
Exactly, like this idea that. To some people, they just don't believe. I mean, that to me is like capitalism. You're infected by this idea that everything needs to have a price or a reason, incentive, the lie of incentive, that you wouldn't do anything. And it makes me think of that because that documentary, there were two, this is a second thought about it now. One was like, you see, these people see it who are great filmmakers and know how to make narratives and stuff like that, and are like, this is done wrong. There's no incentive. There's no correct like cause and response in this form. So it's bad. And I feel like when you're describing, I mean, you could replace Alzheimer's, which this one specifically is, for any other of a million variations of mental disorder that all of us have. That and go, people say to you like, your narrative is wrong. The way you're processing and having cause and effect is wrong. But like the reality of that being your truth And if you can avoid tamping it down because people are telling you the way you process narrative is wrong, you know, everybody buys it because they go, there it is, there's me. Fuck. Really good. But the other thought I had about the American thing when you were saying that was that, like, I feel like Americanism, I'll just call it that now, because I think I need to start calling that instead of like capitalism, because it is a uniquely American way to do things, is really good at post-game breakdowns, saying, well, oh, here's how this worked, and that's why this happened, and blah, blah. And then you base everything in the future on the post-game of the game that already happened. So with movies, it's like, well, we learned how to make narratives. We know what you need this, blah, 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 and then this has happened, and there's this cause and effect. And this documentary comes along that breaks that mold and does something different. And you have all these experts in the room who will go, nah, we know. Well, how do you know? Well, because we failed before and we learned how to break down the failures and break down the successes and kind of mimic them. And now we teach that. But there's always going to need to be someone who, like, a new fuck up will happen. And from that fuck up, you'd learn new things. I guess I'm like equating new fuck ups with also moments of brilliance. It's a mutation. A new fuck up is like a mutation of a cell. This movie's a mutation of this art form. And from that mutation, a lot of people go like, oh, well, we better clean that up.
Right.
But within that, I don't know, I guess I'm really going off on it now, but there is something like really nice in this metaphor for us as individuals, like who all feel like broken weirdos who like don't fit whatever we know. I mean, I guess you've really made a life out of that too, of like pursuing your truth.
Well, I mean, certainly finding the answer to that question you were just asking has been one of my missions, which is like fetish. Like, we get these documentaries about furries, you get them about bronies, you get them about any group that's come together over a shared love of one thing that before was the thing that made them feel separate from everyone, alone and isolated, and is now the reason for their family. You know, like, what comes with that? Like what is that? Someone's watching My Little Pony at home alone, and they just get a feeling, and they're like, this is just speaks to me. I don't know why. And they find some guy in Sweden that feels the same way, and they're like, oh my God, like whatever your perversion is, whatever is that thing you can never tell your husband or wife, is someone else's. Whatever it is, someone in the world is sitting there going like, if I could just find someone who, and you two feel so isolated and so separate because of this thing that should be bringing you all together.
Well, I also think that stuff in particular is interesting too, because there's like, in a global scale thing, it doesn't, I don't know, I guess what the thought you just gave me was like horses, or in the case of My Little Pony, magical horses, like, your brain is seeing these magical horses that are being presented to you the only place you're seeing them, which is this cartoon show. But for most of human, like, there are plenty of instances in human history of like worshiping these magical horses, of like the magical horse. I mean, there's all this really great horse mythology that I've like read. I
gotta be honest with you, it never even occurred to me that it would be about horses until you even mentioned it now.
Well, but I'm just saying there's something like in this like shared dream visions that like for some people will cue into it and understand it to be some other thing. And it's just weird in this time where we're like post-ironic and we have all these like postmodern and we know how to, you know, everything's a business and everything has this facade, to like that we forget for some people they will still be attuned and they will still like this image will come to them. This is why I was like Neil Gaiman stuff was like, he has such a good ability of making you feel like the world you live in is a folktale. Like the world we live in with like bricks and streets and like taxis is a magical one, as magical as the forest with the woodsman and the grandmother and the like witch, and you know, like that's where we're still living. And so when you hear this, or like putting on the skins of animals and dancing around and being like a shapeshifted creature or something like that, like a furry would, like now it seems so silly and strange because we all like live in this modern societies that have an understanding, sort of like self-reflection on like, well, oh, we're past, history's over, you know, like time is over, magical stuff is over, like we live in this age now where we understand everything. But some people will see that and still it will resonate with them the same way these magical dream thoughts that we like, these shared monomyth dreams, I just think it's weird to think that they creep out somewhere in society, you know?
Wouldn't that be nice if it was really, like, that's a much better way to look at it. Like Sandman, what if, you know, we all have these fraught relationships with our family members. It's always push and pull. But what if it was as specific as Sandman, where like your mother is death, your father is dream,
Yeah.
your sister is anarchy? Like, what if, and how you are dealing with them is exactly in your relation to, like, how you're dealing with your grandparents is your relationship to death. So
Well,
it's going to be back and forth,
I
but it's best to keep it.
I think
good.
that's why Neil Gaiman stuff like resonates so much, especially with you and I, with people who really have made narratives like a very ruling factor of their life, like fulfilling them. I think Terry Pratchett said something. I think it was a quote from him. I always associated. I heard it from read a quote from him that he said like, narratives have a life of their own. They live in the ether, and we just give them body. And we give them body either by like writing them in stories or in songs or in plays or movies or whatever, or by living them out. And that like that's, and you know, Joseph Campbell, like all the Campbell, right? Like all the monomyth stuff is like that we repeat the same stories
Star
over and
Wars.
over again. It's Star Wars. Yes, definitely in our writings and our epics and our myths, but like you see the same stories in societies. Or I was thinking about there's a more complicated and nuanced version to describe it, but like the trite one is that they say like hard times make strong people, and strong people make good times, and good times make soft people, and soft people make bad times, and that the cycle will continue forever. And I think that's like there's something like a little bit trite about that and not fully true, but there is a lot of truth that we keep making narratives with like villains that we put into power so that you have villains that you can usurp, and like then the good guys can win again.
You see what you just said? That's the fundamental American thing, and that's the problem.
The usurping of the villains thing? Putting the
No,
villains
that
in power?
somebody is a villain and somebody else is good. That this person is a
Right.
good guy and that person is a bad guy. And I
Right.
find that so boring to watch when a guy doesn't doubt himself, or a woman never has a moment of like, it's just a mission. And why? Because they have to, and
Yeah.
that's it. And they
Well,
will
I
do whatever
almost
they
feel
can.
like-
And that person's a villain, right? That
Yeah.
person's doing bad because they want to do bad. Like, there
Right.
are monsters.
Right.
We're all
Well,
monsters.
don't you think we are definitely all monsters? But
We're
don't
all
you
good,
think
we're all bad.
I feel like the specifically American hero is the anti-hero now, the one who hates himself, who's like, I don't belong in this world.
Is it? I mean,
I do.
There's
I
certainly
do
art that
bad
reflects it, but
things.
that feels European, like the superheroes and the war movies and the things that are American.
Yeah.
that Americans like. Not
Yeah, but everybody always ends up liking like there's a reason everybody liked Clint Eastwood more than they like John Wayne. Ultimately, you know, there's or
Is I can't tell you if that's true. Or
you don't
false.
think so? Maybe I'm wrong.
Is
Maybe
that
I'm wrong.
true? It sounded like something you just said.
No, I thought that was like a given that like, well, maybe it was more like you're in one camp or the other, like Batman or Superman, like that there
Do
was
you
the
have
John
to be
Wayne.
in a camp? I guess
No, you don't have to, but I think there was the feeling is that there's you know the same way you'd be like, are you Slytherin or are you Gryffindor? like you're either a Batman or you're a Superman, because they're like, and I, you know what's funny about that is as I've matured, like I always thought I was Batman because Batman was like the fundamental expression of humanity and like pushing itself to its
And
greatest.
there was a motivation, and it was dark, and
Yeah,
it
and
was
his-
like
yeah,
a
and-
psychosis being played out.
Yes, his darkness and was like, and his striving to be, you know. But now that I'm older, and I feel like I have a less angsty sense of the world, I literally like read one article one time that like turned it all topsy turvy for me, and I was like, wait a minute, just in its fundamental state, Batman, a billionaire, like an insane billionaire, thinks the best way he can help the world is punching poor people in an alley somewhere. Is spending like 30 years to be a fucking ninja and then punch poor people. Like that's what he thinks. Whereas you have Superman, who's not even from here. He's like not even one of us. He just empathizes with like these beings that live and care and deserve wellness. And he has all the power in the world to do anything he wants. And he uses it with restraint and with like kindness and generosity.
He works a day job.
And he works a fucking day job. And his day job is being a journalist. Like someone who believes the most powerful thing is the truth.
And uncovering the truth.
Yes.
See,
And hides himself. He hides himself not when he's doing heroics. He hides himself in normal life so nobody knows, and then shows his real self when he's strongest, saying like the strongest version is your real self.
I feel like that's fantasy. That's not reality. That's a wish dream fulfillment of a God figure, and that Batman is what it's really like.
I think
So, yeah, we gotta be in camps.
I think you're right.
I'm gonna
We got to be in
reverse that.
camps.
We're in
But I
camps.
think my feeling was just that like I guess as I got older and the world feels like it gets darker, and I don't think it's gotten darker when you look at the history of the United States and really see what's going on and what's been going on the whole time. We've done villainous things forever, like just, you know, like when you learn about Teddy Roosevelt and like how much he just loved the idea of war because it was like fun. He called the Spanish-American War a splendid little war, you know, like vile. Like you just realize it's always been these dark things. I find myself more and more being like so drawn to the aspirational good, like to the God figures that we can like aspire to be like. Whereas I feel like prior to that,
But you'll always fall short. And you'll,
oh, of course, but in the falling short, that's like
that's where it all is.
That's the beauty.
Yeah,
like as opposed to this idea that your greatest power is gonna be in giving.
But again,
into,
that's Superman. Like he doesn't fall short ever due to his own limitations. Like,
no, he falls short due to his principles, or that he
falls short
that he
due to
won't.
kryptonite, and that's really it.
That's fair. No, but he does.
He doesn't doubt. He's never like.
Yes, you're right.
He never has a moment of reflection.
No, I think he does, like, because he gets like he can be manipulated by the threat of other people being harmed.
You can take advantage of his unwavering empathy for these other creatures.
Right.
That's not really realistic. And I think if you were to land on another planet and didn't speak the language and it was all these people and maybe you're superior, your first instinct would be like, well, I just got to live here and keep them all together until somebody comes and gets me. And anything short of that, you're not close to God, is a lot to ask of people. And
anything short of that,
yeah. If you're like, I'm gonna take a minute, or I'm gonna take a wife, or I'm gonna take a beat, or I'm gonna work a job,
and this is with the idea that you have godlike powers,
right?
Yeah.
Even even God rested on the seventh day, right?
Yeah, that's funny.
If you believe that.
I mean, I think this whole week, the theme of every other interview I've done this week, we like get into Bible stuff.
Really?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. Maybe there's something in the air, but I just think there is.
I gotta stop breathing.
Maybe the deal has to do with like, again, just the narrative thing that we're like, the narrative that is expressed in like the Bible and the Torah, like the Abrahamic faith stories, so much dictate like the way we've structured like all of society.
These are those things I'm talking about where, like, if your impulse is not of the greatest good, then you're inhuman. Not, oh, that's a human.
Oh, yeah.
The human goes like, oh, I found some money. I should probably give it away. Maybe I'll keep a little for myself.
That is
now
what a
I'll
human
give it
does.
away. That's a human.
That is a human.
And that how dare you even doubt yourself? How dare you even doubt God? How dare you even doubt anything? It's like,
yeah.
And you're weak because of it. And I think that's a strength.
You're weak because of the doubt.
That's what society would tell you. That's what the hero in the film.
Well, no, I think, but don't you? I think. Well, I guess you said earlier, and I just bobbed my head and agreed that you said like Superman has no doubt, but I think he has like lots of it. It's just not the same as no. Actually, I would argue going down this road more. I would argue that Superman is way more full of doubt because he's constantly like, am I doing the right thing? I'm doing my best I'm trying to hold myself to this code. Batman's much more like, as a very clear goal, the ends justify the means. He will do fucked up things.
Let me ask you this. Like when I said once, if you do volunteer work if you couldn't post about it? Like, what if there was a rule? How many people would just not do volunteer work because if I can't?
Right.
Batman and Superman, both, as you pointed out, they insert themselves and their name and their presence into these situations. If there was a greater way to do more good, but they were like, yeah, but you don't get the credit for it.
Right.
Would they still do it?
I think
surely
to be fair,
Batman with all the money and all those things could be doing a lot more on a grander scale.
And I think a real Batman fan would probably tell me that he is doing, like, that the Wayne Foundation also has boys clubs and stuff.
I don't want to go down
I just think there's a very funny thing that in addition to his, like, you know, charities that the Wayne Foundation does, he has to dress up in pajamas and punch people.
He can't even send other people because he would be better off managing the whole thing.
Exactly, which is interesting. Which is
the theory is that the president will protect him because he's the smartest one to lead this war.
Yeah,
I don't want him on the front lines.
I think maybe it bothers me as I get older too because there are real life Batmans and Lex Luthor's more actually where you're like Jeff Bezos has employees like passing out because there's not air conditioning in these Minnesota factories and blah blah, and then goes into interviews saying like, honestly, I just don't know what to do with my money, so I'm gonna like build rockets. And you're like, oh, you piece of shit. Like, you know, Well, what I really think is they're
Is
like
he the good guy or the bad guy?
he's the
I
bad
can't even
guy.
tell.
I mean, he's fucking. I mean, well, this is the problem I had too. I remember when the healthcare thing was coming out that like Amazon was like saying we're gonna maybe get into the health insurance game. I was like, how should I feel about this? Because for the consumer, Amazon's an amazing product. Prime works like it's cheap and it's here and it's wonderful, and I love that. But for his employees, he's awful. Like his factory workers and his people, like it's really bad. Like they don't take pee breaks because they're so scared of all, and you're like, so which one is he going to treat us like when he's doing the insurance adjusting?
Oh, we're the employees.
That's what it will be.
When it comes down to it, and this is the lamest way to judge a thing, but I can't help it. Amazon, the service is great. If I want to buy something, I just have to open up the app and press a button. But if I want to change my privacy settings, I have to log in twice.
Right.
To just change my settings.
Right.
And that's supposed to be for my protection. No, it's because with the 2 different passwords you're asking for, most people are done by the first.
Completely.
And they just move on.
Yeah.
But to purchase something, I can just pick up your phone and press a button. That's what he thinks of us.
Yes.
So I'll say villain.
No, I think that's right. I don't know. And I do think with their rocket plans, they're just like, they see the writing on the wall and they're like, oh, we got to get off this planet. Like, we got to get off this planet. Not like we as the human race, like me and some of my friends, me and Grimes, we got to get off this planet. Yeah, it's weird.
You tell me, I mean, because this is not what we're supposed to be talking about, but it came up recently. I didn't know anything about the pyramids. And having found out that, nobody really knows
Nobody really knows.
And they're like, this is staying as far away from conspiracy as possible.
Trying.
Nope. I'm staying away from it wholly and completely. Watch this. There are basic things about these pyramids that we cannot answer.
I know.
Why are we even bothering going into space when we can't answer what's going on right here?
What's up in the Marianas Trench? Get down there.
Don't get
You know what I mean? Sequest. I wish we lived in that.
Oh,
Remember
he killed
that show?
himself.
I
He
love
killed
that show when I
himself.
was a kid.
He killed himself.
No, the pyramid, that stuff is weird.
Jonathan
I mean, I think
Brandis,
about
he killed himself.
Who did?
Jonathan Brandis.
Are you serious?
Star of Sequest. He killed himself.
He was in that movie Sidekicks, right, too? With Chuck Norris?
Yeah, and Ladybug with Rodney
He
Dangerfield.
did? Why? Do you know why? Or do you know anything? I don't know anything about that.
Same reason that anybody.
That scares me so much. I don't mean to be like glib about it. It's just I feel like I'm like a little numbed out. Like
If it
Kate
wasn't this
Spade killed
podcast, I
herself
wouldn't have brought
recently.
it up. But it seemed like
that is
because when I was doing Nickelodeon as a kid, he was shooting Sequest on the same lot next door,
weird.
and I used to. Yeah, so it's weird when.
Yeah. That freaks me out. That makes me like I don't know. Avicii killed himself a few months ago, and
Kate Spade.
Yeah, exactly. It just keeps happening, and it freaks me out because I think I talked about this literally yesterday, but it's still valuable. It's like I'm always like, oh, I'm past it. I got through that. I learned how to deal with myself. That's not going to happen, and it scares me to think that you just don't know what places your brain's going to take you to sometimes. I had like a depressive episode recently that was very strange because it was very like I could see the experience I was having, and I like felt like crying for no reason and all this stuff. And this part of me was going like, wow, it was like feeling someone else's feelings, but they were still very real. I don't know. I think probably the most important instinct to build into yourself is the phone a friend one is like to just know right away, to like just to know, hey, tell someone. And that to me is the hearing other people say your thoughts thing too, and why it's so important to just go like anything you can do to go like, I'm a human, you're a human, we're together, there's a web.
My parents live in Long Island in East Meadow, and the family across the street from them that I grew up with, he was a gardener because across the street he had the corner house, so he had a big garden that he loved. And when the kids graduated from college and they retired, they were moving to Florida. That was the plan. The husband never really wanted to go to Florida and was pretty adamant to his wife about it. And she insisted, and eventually, why won't you move to Florida? He's like, because of the garden and the night patrol that he does with my dad in this little Long Island town. That's what that's not a good reason enough to not move to a place your wife wants to go. They decided to move. They sold the house. They were packing things up, and he killed himself. Retirement age, like in his 70s, killed himself. Trying to wrap your mind around that. That's how much he didn't. And it's not even that. What breaks my heart is not that he didn't want to go to Florida that much. It was that he couldn't tell, like, whatever it was, he could not communicate to her successfully how crippling this was for him.
the Kate Spade thing, I saw her husband release.
Apparently her letter is beautiful. I didn't read it.
I don't know. I didn't read it either. I don't know about it. I heard it.
I feel like we should read these letters. I feel like with serial killers and with suicide, like there's
something to learn.
Yeah.
That's true.
Most of what the Unabomber said has come true. Like most of the reasons he did that have come to fruition. It doesn't validate it, but it's all they want from us. Yeah. And we never do it.
This is a dumb left turn, but it just made me just the power of reading or something like that. But I was reading a little bit of this Pedagogy of the Oppressed I've been reading, and that guy, I forget his fucking name, Paulo, I don't know, but he's brilliant. He had a lot to do with, he was like exiled from Brazil because he was upsetting the balance of power by literally by just educating farmers, just teaching them how to read. And that like in reading were these like great tools of self-liberation. And I was watching the remake or the HBO Fahrenheit 451, which I quite enjoyed. Like, I think they did a really fun job. Like, I also, because I think about when I saw Fahrenheit 451, they showed it to me in junior high. And I'm like, that's how they'll show this to people as junior high kids, you know? And like the way they update it for now, I like Michael B. Jordan a lot. I love Michael Shannon. I have like a personal connection to Michael Shannon because like the first play I ever did in Chicago when I was like 16 was at his theater, Red Orchid Theater. And it was before he was like Michael Shannon. All I knew was he was like a cool, good actor in Chicago, and he was like come sweep the theater and stuff. And like after,
did you have any experiences with
after
him?
A preview, he was like just like said, "Hey, I saw you, you're real good in that show." And I was like, oh fuck, you know, because I'm like fucking 16. But I saw him in The Pillow Man a couple years later, and he was just fucking, he's mind blowing. So I was watching Fahrenheit 451. And there's this scene in it where they're in this room, the room when they get to the house that's full of books and stuff like that. And Michael Shannon's alone with Michael B. Jordan, who's like his protege. And he goes, have you ever held a real book? And he's like, no. He's like, you quick before the other men come back. You should check it out, you know? And it's Kafka, and he opens it. And the way they filmed it was like, they very close and zoomed in full frame, like a few letters a word takes up the whole frame. They read one sentence illuminated, and it just says like, how could a man even be considered guilty? And like and he just goes and snaps the book shut. And in this moment, you're like, oh wow, that is. I took for granted my whole life being able to read how many things like one person on the one person you fall in love with, the one sentence, the one idea that never leaves your head. I remember hearing in that Hardcore History podcast, I've ever heard of that. Dan Carlin does these history podcasts, and talking about World War I, he said one of the reasons Russia didn't just like smash World War I up and win then was because they had Lenin was like in exile from Russia, already being a rabble rouser with communism and stuff. He was in exile in Germany, and the Germans knew this, and they funded him returning to Russia and like kept him funded so he could destabilize, just because he had an idea that was so infectious and empowering, and that they knew if we just let this idea spread, like their war machine won't function. And that is like so powerful to think that of the actual power. So when you say yes, we should read the letters of Mad Men and Lost Souls, it's like, yeah, you're probably right. I don't know. I didn't even know they published a whole letter. I heard, but that makes me want to seek it out a little bit now, just because
all they would want is for, I'm guessing, to not, their name is irrelevant. Just read what I have to say. Yeah. And all we do is spread their name around and hide the letters and don't spread those around.
Totally. Well, there is an aspect too of some of those things that does feel very draconian, fascist 451.
Yeah,
like,
don't give them what they want. I get that.
Well, no, not even don't give me. No, don't give them what they want. But like, what if something they said was true? You know what I mean?
It's usually true.
That's what I'm saying.
The guy who killed John Lennon was like, I just couldn't wrap my mind around this guy saying, "Imagine no possessions," in a mink coat in a private jet.
Is that true?
Yes. He's got a point.
Do
you know what I mean? And it's the fact that we can't say those things. I used to have a bit I would do if the cab driver wanted to talk. I don't usually like to talk. But if they did, I would ask them two questions that are mostly irrelevant now. one and be like, how do you feel about gay marriage? And oftentimes they'd be against it. And I would ask them why. Because I had never heard a reasonable argument against it. I heard passionate arguments, but I never heard anything that changed my mind, and I'm genuinely looking for one. And what I found is that most of these strongly held beliefs could not withstand that question.
Well, that's like the whole basic truth that all bigotry like dissolves on contact. Like as soon as you live among people different from you, you're like, oh.
I mean, but the fact that we can live a life where it's not questioned for so long, this belief that you'll march for.
Oh yeah, my Zeke, who's on this podcast, he was telling me that he went to a wedding back somewhere in South Georgia, which they Panhandle, Florida, which he said they call South Georgia or something like that. Very southern, very, and that these people there were talking to him and saying, "What's it like living in a sanctuary city?" Like they think like MS-13, this mythical fucking gang, is running around setting things on fire, and it's like a fucking, death wish or something, They think that. And like the idea that, it's like, no, it rules being in a city with a million different kinds of people. That's how food is good. That's how, I have this thing that, the coastal elitism that people get upset about. I just use coffee as the example. It's like, no, it's objectively better, the things we come up with. Because when you get a lot of different people trying a lot of different things, we mutate faster and we come to a conclusion that's better faster. And people all made fun of like $4 lattes and shit like that they drink in those cities until Starbucks could be in every gas station in the fucking world. And now all across the country, everyone's drinking $4 fucking lattes with soy milk and shit like that. Because as soon as it's available to have something better and objectively good, like suddenly everyone's like, oh yeah, that is good. But as long as it's outside of their reach, there's something about it, I don't know, which I do think gets to some of that stuff about, we were talking on, earlier and about like any example of liberation, a person has liberated themselves and their spirit is being themselves. Often, I think if someone is so afraid of their own truth and whatever is inside of them, or has been told it's not okay, well, I think there's a resentment. There's a great resentment and fear of that thing.
What other people think?
Oh, well, I don't know. I think conditioning, what is it that keeps it stuck inside of you?
Yeah.
Well,
why is it that we wouldn't be able to formulate an opinion until we say it out loud and gauge how others feel first and then decide whether it's an opinion or not?
Right. That's precisely, that's what I was going to say back to you. Yeah. Like, what is it that makes it hard for us to connect with our inner truth in the first place? Even because we're using it as it's easy to say, like, somebody who's bigoted can't connect with their inner truth about like the sensitivity they feel or something like that, and so that makes them hate people who are soft or something like that, or like that's easy. Like, you know what I mean? Like acting girly, like a man who's like somebody acts girly. It's like they're afraid of their own instinct to nurture and the lack of it that they had, and like the desire they have to love things. I always thought that about like barbecue is like in American culture. It's like the one way men are allowed to nourish their families is like if they put it through this vein of like, this is my domain and there's fire and I got a big tool with a huge stick on it.
Is barbecue an American?
Well, no. Cooking over fire like that is definitely not an American thing, but the American culture of, I wouldn't even think barbecue, although barbecue's an extreme, but like the grill out of like
that's American.
That thing.
We've adopted it, stolen it from somewhere else.
Well, yeah. And I mean, that's one of those things that's like every human culture. Did you ever watch the Michael Pollan series? I think it's called Cooked. And each it was 4 episodes on Netflix. Really good. It's like fire, earth, wind. It's kind of like the vibe, but like the earth, or maybe it's flour, I don't know, but they do one that's all about bread, and they do one that's all about cooking over fire, and like
I think you and Lee were talking about that.
That's possible, but that it's like just there are things in food things that are just like universal.
Yeah,
that
you guys
are just
breaking down bread.
Yeah. Oh yes, Lee and I were talking about the bread thing. I do think bread is like, there's a reason. Yeah,
well, that was fascinating. I didn't even think of that, because I'm not a cook like you, but that these two things that will kill you separately together make bread.
Yes, exactly. They mutate. They also ferment and literally ferment its own new life. You get like B vitamins and stuff in there from these little yeasts. It is like a miraculous thing. Like you create like fecund earth from dust, from nothing. I don't know. And that there is something. So with the fire,
in society, or a thought that's poison, keep it away. It's no good.
Yes.
You don't know that because it might meet another poison And
Yeah,
together,
dude. Yes, that's
you might.
That's salt. That's salt. Like chlorine and what is NaCl? Right? It's chlorine and oh my god, whatever the other thing is. That's salt. They're two things that'll kill you. Sodium chloride. Sodium and chlorine will kill you.
Right.
But
So
you put them
you
together
don't
and it's like
know
delicious and essential.
what's going to kill you from looking at it?
Right.
You don't want to have to die to find out.
Right. Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. I guess that does get back to the thing. I always thought this thing about myself early on. The reason habits, including bad habits, even if a bad habit was uncomfortable for you, like self-flagellation or something like that, self-flagellating habits, like even if you knew you wanted to break them, the reason they're hard to break is because the human organism craves stasis. Because all the human organism knows, all the human organism's job to do is keep you alive. And whatever you're doing, it knows is working because you're alive. Like the proof is in the pudding. So why would it ever make it easy for you to change anything that you're doing? Even if it's uncomfortable, even if you're like limping through, whatever.
It just takes practice and work. Once your body thinks this is a route to something, then that's how we get that.
I'm just saying, like,
and it doesn't know there's other ones, and it's going to take practice, especially when you've worked one route so deliberately and thoroughly to break out of it. But we have to try and fail. Like, you might not eat for a couple days, finding another way to get food.
Right.
But that's what it takes. You know, people, I've been working for a year straight. I'm going to go on vacation. No, you're not. Mm-hmm. You think you're going to sit by the pool? You're just going to do that? And you're considered a failure for not enjoying. What's wrong with me? I'm here with my family in paradise and I can't sit still because it's going to take a little bit.
Well, that's, and it's funny. I've heard a long time ago something that like scientists and science-minded folk, I guess, like chafe at artists and philosophers like taking their scientific principles and then like applying it to some like emotional or energetic thing because they're like, well, that's not quite how it works. But I think about inertia all the time. This law of inertia, it's like remarkable that also seems true for habits and feelings, that we really do, like, things perpetuate themselves. It's almost like this principle of like life wants life, like life wants itself. The Khalil Gibran thing, children aren't your children, their life's longing for itself. That like there seems to be a tendency in the universe for things to want to continue being the thing that it is, no matter what. So that applies not just to organisms, but it applies to moods. It applies to like momentum and gravity. Like the idea of not just stasis, but inertia. The tendency of things to want to remain what they are is just like
that's
universal.
100%. And I think you can apply it to anything. And anything from inertia to a corporation, like it's just
that's so
given
weird
that if anything grows too large, it will very specifically stop doing the thing it was built to do and actually do the opposite.
Yeah.
Like any protections that are there to keep harmful things from us are now the makers of those things.
Yeah.
And it works like that with people, and it works like that inertia. The thing that's keeping you moving is now why you're out of control. Because it's gone.
Yeah, well, I do think that's how we get to this space that we're in now, where like ideas like stop to even have meaning. Like I think like the War Machine is like that.
like this conversation.
Like this conversation. I mean, this is bound to happen. We manifested this before when we're like, this is just going to be.
I did.
But I do think it's a valuable thing. You know, when that famous speech of Eisenhower warning against the military-industrial complex, it's like true, because he knew what would happen was we'd be in this position. We had a moral and just war. We're all gonna, quote unquote, but like seems like it in retrospect. You know, there's a lot of shady things about the choices about when we entered, seemed very calculated, so that because like after World War II, we were the only ones with manufacturing capabilities, and that's why we rule the world now, because 50% of all exports in all the world came from America in the post-war years. So we set up the International Monetary Fund, we set up the World Bank, and like just because we chose to enter the war late and because we were across an ocean, we just got to come out looking like, we did it, when really the Russians did it. But anyway, this idea that you would create a mechanism for some quote unquote good reason, like we need to all band together to build these planes and these bombers and come up with new technology because we need to defeat somebody who's doing really fucking evil things.
Nothing brings people together better and faster than the exclusion of someone else.
Ooh, very good.
It's not shared love. It's we don't like that.
Well, that to me gets back to that thing about the uniquely American thing of we're very good at a disaster and then we respond to it versus just trying to head off anything that might lead to a disaster.
Yeah, we're so present. We learn every lesson over and over and over again and act like it's brand new each time.
Every time.
We're not talking about Trump at all. I'm just going to say this one thing.
That's fine.
And then we're not talking about him.
That's fine.
It just because it's something we know would be true, but I was shocked at how exactly on point it was. Some YouTube clip of George Carlin talking about Bill Clinton, and you could have just removed the word Bill, and it was exactly. And he's like, what does the world come to?
Right.
Bill Clinton, this guy. You know why we like him? He just, because we know what he's thinking. We know he's lying. We know it's just so
listen to
on point.
Any Bill Hicks act and be like, when did he do this?
Right.
Oh, he died before. Like the craziest thing about him to me was like listening to his acts that are about a Bush doing a meaningless war in the Middle East and making fun of pop culture's love of someone with last name Cyrus. And then like it applied exactly the same 20 years later. Like it's so bizarre. Yeah, that we keep. I mean, and we don't need to get into like the political parts of Trump, but I think the things that are profound about it. I mean, and this is getting way back. I wanted to bring this back to this circled thing when we said this thing about Sandman, your father's death, or your mother's death, and your father's this and whatever. That like truly though in our lives, that is what's happening for most of us. Like these figures do represent these things. We do need to reconcile like the parts of ourself that resonate with nurturing and what nurturing means will all be informed by what our goddess of nurturing was, the one that we came out of and had, for better for worse. Right. And so the like global mind of our mental well-being as a nation, like that's what I felt about the Trump thing after the election, after being like, how could this happen? Like before it being like, no. There was a feeling after it all happened that it was like, of course, this is the correct representation of the makeup of this country.
Mencken said it. There's a quote, an H.L. Mencken quote. He predicted Trump 50 years ago to the T. He said, if politics and the war machine and it all continues this way, then by about this year, we will have a president who is, and it's exactly right.
Weird. Yeah.
It's exactly right. I'm tired of this like, look, we did it. We did the best we can do. Like, we voted the popular vote. When you ask Americans what they want about abortion, about religion, about guns, we're mostly on the same page. Hillary should have won by more. Maybe or it should have, you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying.
She should have won. It was too close for comfort, but we did the right thing. I'm so tired of all of these systems built to protect us that now do the opposite, but like the Electoral College.
Yes.
And we're told, well, we got to get out there and dig in more. We've done it.
Well, to me, that is, I think
it's got to be a grassroots movement. We had Bernie Sanders. The system removed him.
That's right.
The Electoral College switched it over. We did the things we're supposed to do. Yeah. So when I hear we got to dig in more and try even harder, no, these protections like the Electoral College that was built to protect us from this has now caused it.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. I mean, the part of the solution would be breaking California into like 6 states or something like that. So it wasn't like the 5th largest economy in the world had the same amount of senators as Wyoming.
Right.
But also, I also think there's a quality too of that, of like in doing what we were supposed to, in like adhering to these systems. To me, I think I've noticed a great waking up among a lot of people of going like, whoa. I guess we were asleep at the wheel being like, okay, it's kind of fine. We kind of have a generally leftward drift. But like then it kind of, I don't know. I definitely felt like after voting for Hillary and being like psyched about it and buying in all the like a woman finally and all this stuff, after buying in afterwards, looking and going like, wait a minute, like she presided over this like $200 billion like warplane deal with Saudi Arabia, and our foreign policy is hers, and like this whole thing of like what I thought, like what I accepted, this Nancy Pelosi getting on TV and like a college kid on CNN in a roundtable being like, do you think in the wake of this thing, I'm paraphrasing everything, but he said something, do you think in the wake of this Trump thing there might be a trend similar to the way the Tea Party had their like crazy right conservative bump of this wave of taking back offices? There would be a leftist version where like maybe Democratic people and all these blue left people will start to consider more radical economic policies like socialism and things like that. And Nancy Pelosi, when she gets her chance, she goes, the first thing out of her, she goes, we're capitalists. It's just the way it is. Like, laughs about it. And you have a kid, you have a college student saying, like, this doesn't seem to be working for anybody. Would you think more radical things to fix this fucking thing will happen? And this person just laughs and goes, and I think there's a lot of people now who are going like, whoa, a lot of this stuff we thought was fine, which I think is honestly, I don't know that you can really have, like on this side, it's a mental health thing that we're talking about. But as artists, like, I don't think you can separate politics, art, culture, and mental health and technology at all. Like, these things are also part of our daily lives. I was talking to my therapist about it. She's not telling me specifics, but saying she's hearing from a lot of people, like, the news, these things that are macro things make up our sense of self, our sense of well-being, our sense of reality in such a practical way, especially in the way we have like technology now. We have like a phone like right in our fucking pocket and right in our eyeballs. Like, it all becomes part of our reality, which I guess just to stay sane, you have to end up like learning how to draw boundaries for once, how to like put it down and go like, okay, I need to take my macro universe and turn it into me in this room, me with this grass, me with my breath.
Yeah. And no one's going to encourage you to do that. You're not going to get it from somebody else. No one's going to.
Well, it's hard.
You have to do it on your, like, you're going to have to put your boundaries down. You're going to have to not care when you're like, you know what? I'm taking a break from cable news. And I'm like, nah, you got to watch this one thing.
Well,
I will.
It is hard not to, because there's a self-enforcing shame of like, well, I don't want to put my head in the sand like an ostrich. I have to see, like a kind of like Werner Herzog, like we must not look away, But I think there's a distinction between.
But if there's any gift that Werner Herzog has, it's ending the interview. He knows exactly how to do it.
That's
He's
so
a master
true.
at going, we're good. We got it.
He's also
and letting it sit there,
yes.
pregnant, not even having to hammer it home.
You know what it is? There's that moment.
Trusting.
There's that moment in the Grizzly Man thing which is the moment when he's listening to the tape with the family member who's never listened to the tape of the guy dying, and he just takes on. He goes, "You must never listen to this tape." And she goes, and he goes, "You must destroy it." Yeah. And she goes, "I will, Werner. I will." It's like, yeah. Sometimes you have to like not let things have life.
His documentary on Life of Pi, or
I don't know.
I think I made that up. His Lo and Behold.
Yes.
And he's
the internet one, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And he
I didn't see it. I heard a long interview with him about it. The Marin one, I think, maybe.
Okay.
Anyway,
he was speaking to this man who had invented code in the early stages of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And basically his theory is that you write out code. You don't cut and paste. And
right.
Once you start cutting and pasting, the art is gone. And that there's something about typing it that's just different than cutting and pasting it. And the world very quickly moved into cut and paste. That's how we're coding. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And he is still this lone holdout living in a boat. And we're
a man who can't even bear to live on solid ground like
Yep.
the rest of us. Yeah.
Yep. And he's talking, and as he's talking, Werner's interviewing him, and I said to myself, just like at the beginning of the podcast, like, I want to talk like that guy. He's so succinct, economical, graceful with his words.
Mm-hmm.
He sounds so measured and in control, and it's very unique the way he speaks. And
that's something I lust after so much,
Yep.
and never do the work to try to attain. It's just
look at
not
us.
capable.
Look at this. Look at us.
This fucking
Disgusting.
salad.
It's like, as he's speaking, and I'm admiring and yearning, lusting after this man's cadence and how he handles himself. He's explaining how society's moved on from what he thinks is right, and he goes, a lot of people think I'm crazy. And Werner goes, I don't think you're crazy. And the way that man's face melts, like, and he goes, really?
Oh,
and
wow.
His whole, and he actually says, he goes, I don't think anybody's ever said that to me before. And it's in that moment that I realized, I want to be a crazy person.
You are a crazy person.
This person that I admire.
I know, but you are a crazy person. And I
Yes.
think a lot of people, that is so fat, because to have Werner Herzog be the one to tell you, I don't think you're crazy.
And to have it mean something to you.
Yeah. It's like, because
to mean the world.
Well, I mean, this is how we're all becoming. This is how everything's so topsy turvy. This is like where all the like, you know, ignorance is strength kind of stuff is like coming to be real. This Orwellian sort of world, because we should all look at a Werner Herzog or this guy or you and go like, oh, the thing that crazy is that's a human. You know, that's a human being a human.
Weakness, doubt, insecurity.
Dude, yes, this is you know, and again, I've talked about Kanye too much on this podcast. I got to pause on it. Yes, I definitely have. But to me, there is a quality of like, if you're in the circumstances that human being is in and you don't go crazy, there's something wrong with you. Like to be an individual human being, like when he says, I am a god, and, you know, I am a god, like if he lived in Aztec times, he would be. There's something in my thoughts about his constant breakdowns and messiness and like inability to express himself. I was like, now when I see celebrity people who are like just so down to earth, they're just so normal, and they're just like in an interview being like, no, I'm just normal like you. You're like, you're lying on some level. The way the world treats you and the unconscious expectations you would have, like you've adjusted in a way that is not sane.
I've never met anyone anyone I meet when I have the response like, wow, what a great person. Like, why are they so nice? Like, why are they so selfless? Or even someone in a position of power or a celebrity or someone who I'm just like, who's so nice when they don't have to be.
Yeah.
I dig. And so far in my limited experience, I have yet to meet anyone who is like that, who I didn't find out, oh, they used to be a big asshole, or they had a divorce, or they were a drug addict and now they're sober. It's always a 2.0. It's a choice.
Yeah.
The zealousness of the convert. Like, it does come from a Batman place. Like, you are slaying demons by doing good, but those are the ones who don't seem to doubt themselves because they've seen the bad. No one's perfect.
No.
Who was it that said it? Amanda Knox.
Yeah.
She said something great because I relate to her a lot.
Very cool. Very cool.
We both respond physically and emotionally in public different than you would expect, and it tends to be the opposite. Like, if I'm supposed to be nervous in a situation where anyone would be nervous, I'll be extraordinarily calm.
That's me.
And a simple thing like a first date or a stupid podcast, I'll be like crippled with for no reason. And it doesn't make sense. But Amanda Knox said, we want to believe that we can tell who the monsters are from looking at them. We want to believe we can point at them and say, that's a monster, because then we're safe. Because now we're okay. I can spot them. But you can't. It's every one of us. So we're all capable of good. We're all capable of bad at any moment. And there's no good guys and bad guys.
Well, there's choices.
Right, there's choices. I believe there's mental disease or even drugs that can fuck up your brain so bad that, there's no coming back for them. Like, I've looked in the eyes of some homeless downtown and just seen that I can't reach them. There's nothing there now at the moment to get to. Like, I don't know if there's still good and bad in them, but the good might be beyond. You might not be able to get to it. But within that, I think we're all capable of this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean,
admitting that.
I had a thought.
And saying it is a choice, I think, is noble and not some just inherent, I was born good. I'm from another fucking planet. That's how good I am. Like, I'm just here to help you. Like, no, we're all.
Yeah.
What if you couldn't take credit for it? What if it wasn't a bat signal? You know?
Yeah.
Trying to tie it all together the best I can.
It's good. It's good. I just still think there's something really beautiful in his choice to, like, they're not even me, but he just relate, you know? I think maybe because I feel like an alien so much. Like, that you're like, and to see, like, this great nobility.
Don't we?
I think we all do, but that's why I think you can take that and either go, like, well, I'm not even one of them. Or you can go, like, everything's different from me, and that's so beautiful. Like, that's so fascinating and wonderful, and I love, you know what I mean?
When I'm ever in an argument with someone, I'm praying that they will be right and that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Because then I learn something.
Right.
And something changes.
That's in jiu-jitsu, there's a thing where I'm like, these days, you know, it wasn't always this, but the days when I'm getting my asses kicked, sometimes they're vexing or whatever, but that's usually when I'm like a guy will like pull some move on, like if someone does something slick, somebody I didn't see coming, like really fucking flops me, really like passes me or something. I laugh, and you know, some guys don't know how to respond to it. Well, they think, I don't know, I might come off as a dick or something, but I'm like so delighted. I'm like, you fucking got me. Fuck. I was like, I really fell for that thing you set up for me. And then the days that you're getting smashed, like just smashed, sometimes they don't feel good or whatever, but always give me a little bit of time, and that's when I'm turned on. That's when I'm like, you're learning. Like someone has changed your paradigms. Like you had it figured out and none of your answers worked, and now you're like, oh damn, everything's like lit up and the wheels are all spinning. That's where like the real delight comes. Like in defeat is when you get to
that's
grow.
A rare gift I think that you have that's makes this podcast so enjoyable and makes you less of a monster than others, is that people would rather not learn and be right.
Oh, well, that's true.
They're humiliated by learning in front of someone. They will exact revenge on it.
Well, humiliation, I always think embarrassment and humiliation is a really funny thing. Like embarrassment, humiliation, shame even, I think are kind of in the same category, almost the same thing. And the weird thing about them is like they don't exist unless they exist. Like if your pants fall down in public and you're not embarrassed, there's no embarrassment. But if you are embarrassed, everybody else feels like, oh God. Mm-hmm. It's like it's either there or not, and perpetuates itself or not.
Sometimes people are there to remind you to be embarrassed if you're not. And they will see you handling it well and being like, aren't you humiliated?
Yeah, exactly.
Like when the kid falls and there's that beat when they look up at the parent, and the parent 9 times out of 10 goes, ah! And the kid just starts crying.
Yes, because they're like, oh, something
everyone's
crazy
well, you see a parent who's like, you're cool, you're good. And they're like,
oh, it sounds like I'm cool. So in the metaphor of that, I do feel like you can be kind of a beacon for people where if you are made a fool of, you've made a fool of me. You know, if somebody something corrects you or presents something that you never thought of, trumps you, you know, that like, if your reaction is one of shame and guilt and like humiliation, and go like, well, no, then like you demonstrate or to shut them back or try to like correct their grammar and say like, well, actually you said it the wrong way, so you can't listen to their truth. You've created an embarrassment sample. Now people know to go forth in their lives and be humiliated and angry and emotionally violent. But if you can be in a situation and go like, oh, what, like grateful and in wonder and like laughing at yourself like, oh, fuck. Like people take that lesson forward. Just
I don't
in
think
demonstration.
A sense of humor about yourself is something that can develop over time. I haven't seen it. If you don't find yourself funny, if you're not self-aware in that way, if everything else is funny except you, I don't think over time you learn to develop it. If you're not funny, if it's not funny when something happens to you, then it's never gonna be, and you're never gonna develop that.
I had some dumb epiphany just about the phrase "make fun of." You making fun of me? Like, are you making fun of me right now? That there's like the idea that would be offensive to you. Just breaking down the sentence. Are you trying to make me fun?
Right. Making light of me. Am I trivial and light?
Yes, light. Am I light? Am I light? But like fun is good. Fun is the reason to be alive. Fun is delightful and fun. It's
Impersonation
fun.
is the greatest form of flattery. I took the time to think about
But isn't that just funny to think about somebody who's so mad at the idea of them suddenly being considered fun? Like the reason we live, like we go on roller coasters and eat things that taste good, is because it's fun.
Well, this is about control, and this is about people's relationship to feeling out of control. Yeah. And if you can't, you will burn down the planet to maintain that sense of control and never let it out of your... And being out of control and not knowing what's going to happen next, not knowing for a second if someone's trying to hurt you or elevate you.
So do you think that can be taught, like, or not taught? Yeah, taught or learned or chosen to like live in more freedom or something? I will say this: Burning Man rubbed me the real wrong way when I was there. Like I ended up learning, you know, when I could get over my fucking self and my judgment. But I had this realization. Somebody else said to me, "Is like, you don't understand, like." For the people who are there, for a lot of them, it is the only time they get to be like weirdos. They get to be like in this weird, free, naked, and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, you're living every day of your life, like in this wonder, curiosity, I don't fucking know, whatever. Anything could be anything, looking for something beautiful and strange constantly. And most people aren't. And so you're like, it would be like if you were like a teenager and you had to go sit with the elementary school kids or something like that you'd be like, these kids are fucking lame. But like, it's because it's just, which to me is very hopeful in this conversation, this context, the idea that some people can make a choice to be weirder, to be sillier, to be more open and change and break out of their
with a structured
in the context of where it's allowed
and end, and no
for
one
these
better
7 days
harsh
in the
my
desert.
vibe, and you better, because like anything when you get close to it, you learn, oh, it's kind of the opposite of what I thought it was. Like deadheads and people that love the Grateful Dead are considered hippies and free love and drugs and whatever, and they're in, as you get into that world, these are the most OCD, like
that's
rigid
true.
And controlling and afraid of change. Like, we will smoke this marijuana cigarette when the first beat of the music starts, and it has to be together, and if this doesn't happen the way I said and we're all together, then they cannot adjust. And these are supposed to be the free hippies.
I do take a lot of like in the Burning Man thing, or in that example, or I think about it in movies a lot, that like in all of the sinister business and money-making business of movies, it is still something very beautiful to me that I can still go see a movie at a major cinema, like a Star Wars movie that comes out, and just be like, have fun. And it's still magical. It's still amazing craftsmanship on screen. It's still like this spectacular thing. I retweeted something that I thought was funny the other day. Someone was like, here's my The Last Jedi review. And then it was like, every movie is a tiny play that you can put on a computer and watch any. It said like your ancestors would fall on their knees and weep at the wonder of what you're seeing. Try being grateful, you fucking shit heels, or something. And so to me, like, I do take great inspiration, I guess, just in the fact that even in these constructs of what you just said, we're going to have fun at this time, that like something magical and inexplicable does still wind up there. You know, in the middle of Burning Man, all these people who are like, whatever the fuck is, there's a million things going on there. Going out to the playa at night and all the lights and these literal yachts, like ships on wheels, and there's nothing like it. It's a dreamscape that I don't know if will be recreated since or before in human history. This weird space. You know what I mean? Woodstock. Yeah. That kind of a thing that people like write about forever. This one weird thing that happened. Mm-hmm. This is going well. Do you mind? I'll take a break. I have to pee, and then I want to get into my questions. We'll kind of try to make it a thing. All right. We just took the break was longer than most breaks that I end up having on these things.
They don't know that.
I know, but I like to keep it. It's all part of the context for me.
Can you tell them what you did?
Well, what I did was we discussed for a while about that there's the idea of a thread to be held that's holding it together. That this thing, me calling it my good bad brain, really is that. Like, I am really filtering it all through my brain, and that there's not necessarily an easy through line with a lot of that, but that I hope in the kind of cloud sense of it. I like to think of it in the best version of it, that it might end up being like, you ever seen like a Jackson Pollock in person?
A Jackson Pollock
in person, like a real one, not like a print. I remember I saw one. I don't know if you had this experience, but I remember I saw one at LACMA a while ago, and I remember seeing like splatter art and stuff like that in books and being like, I get all the jokes about modern art and blah blah. It's nothing. And then I saw this one in person, and it like scared me. It was like, oh, he saw an abyss, and there's like layers, and there's this thing that in person that's just really scary and dark and limitless, like endless. And it was like that, and that like in somehow in this mess of all this fucking nonsense that from far away, or from when you just kind of are is like kind of nothing, like some gestalt thing comes through that's like, you know.
Well, now you're speaking to me.
That's my hope.
I like the idea that you were talking about of people meeting these new people, or just seeing them through your perspective. Like, it's your POV story.
Yes.
It's filtered through your good, bad brain.
That's correct.
And we are then reflected by how we deal with you.
Yeah, that's true. Like I was saying, I always feel like I have I say this a lot where I go, I think I was always doing, because I feel like there's some weird on it. I don't want to bore the no one. Like, you didn't know that I was saying things to other people, but I don't want to.
Everyone does that, and it kills me. Because we're embarrassed, because we're the star of our own movies in our lives.
Right.
And you see these people that do interviews, and they say all the time, like, I was just saying this yesterday.
Yes.
Or I actually said this the other day. And you're like, we don't need to know that. You're
Yeah.
embarrassed because you're repeating yourself.
Exactly.
But we don't know that. We weren't there with you yesterday. Just tell us the story. There's another language thing I want to hit real fast because it's something, I don't know if it's just Jews or if it's just friends or it's just liberals, but we have a way of talking with each other now more and more where we say no when we mean yes, and we argue when we're agreeing. And it creates like a competitive or a more aggressive or hostile tone of the conversation when you're both agreeing. If you're like, oh, the best thing about this new Kanye record is this. And I want to say, I also enjoy when he does this, but instead I'll say, no, the best part is when he does this.
Yeah, but I think-
and now you're arguing.
I think that's just like when dogs are like, you can't, like we were talking before we started the whole thing, when poor dog owners don't realize that the dogs aren't fighting, they're having fun, and that they could, their anxiety could suddenly turn it into fighting, so they'd create a weird feedback loop for their dog. But like that there is a version of like us, like we're in agreement.
Right.
But
why
it's
do I
like-
resist that? I don't like that anymore. And I found
I
like
don't
I
know.
have a tougher time talking to the people that I agree with because I feel like we're arguing as opposed to when I don't and we're listening.
Do
'Cause
you have siblings?
I do.
How do you guys interact? Were you guys like on top of each other kind of?
Yeah.
That's interesting because I would say that's why I think I like it. I feel comfortable because that's like me and my siblings are all just like on top of each other and like and there's this kind of like
Well, then that's probably it.
You
It's
know?
probably it. You're either like attracted to that stuff,
Yeah.
or you're repelled by it. Because
yeah. I think like anytime you'd see a cartoon where like the cats disappear into a cloud and there's like a paws coming out, that always looked really appealing to me. Like that looks really comfortable and cute and nice and like warm. Like they're having, that's a tumble.
I want to live there
Yeah,
with those people.
that feels like home. That feels like home.
Yeah, I know. I'm not attracted.
I'm like that with food, too. In like a weird like I always think about when I was one time, like my brother would do the most insane things. He would like take a look, like we had a loaf of crusty bread. He would like scoop the white part out of the bread and leave and you'd go to get the loaf and then be like, someone hollowed this out just to eat the parts they wanted. Or like you'd be eating something and my brother would come up and just take it out of, like on the way to your mouth, like take a bite of it. And I think that's so nice. And it's created like, if people have like boundaries or like a sense of, they're like, what are you doing? Or I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
I've always been like that. I get genuinely offended when somebody asks me if they can use my bathroom.
Really?
Even just casually, because it's like that formality is like so over the top. I love when someone comes over and like goes right into the fridge and just makes themselves comfortable. If you were talking about me, you weren't sure if I liked you in the beginning.
Right.
It's probably because I was making fun of you, and if I was making fun of you, it was because I felt comfortable with you. Because that's New York, that's my family.
Totally.
If we're comfortable enough to not be so precious about our feelings, then that means I love you. Like, if
completely.
I can complain to you, if I can be a failure in front of you, if I can take you down, that's how I express love. That comfort and the idea that like,
well, because you can't do that to people. Because you can't do that to people. I mean, that is like jujitsu or boxing or something like that. You can't, if you engage in like fisticuffs with somebody you don't like, it's very violent and scary and bad. If it's somebody that you have a foundational respect and trust and care and admiration for, then like it's just fun to like be to be roughhousing with them, which that's like emotional, verbal roughhousing. It's like to me again, like the tumbleweed of bodies that looks appealing. It's because that they're just so comfortable with each other. They care. That's intimate,
And the two form one.
Yes.
It's a little cloud.
All right. Because in the interest of some kind of thread, I'm going to bring it to the more formal section where I'm going to ask you these cues, and we'll see if you have any answers for them. The first one is, have you ever been diagnosed with any kind of like mental illness or disorder or just thing? I always feel like weird saying illness or disorder because I don't know if they're all
Diagnosed.
like I'm depression and ADD and
I don't think I've gone.
ooh. Can I share a thought about that? I meant to say this earlier. The ADD thing. When we were talking about, you said you always have the opposite reactions. Like you're supposed, this is all crazy, but you're calm. I've always had that if things were extreme crisis mode, and I learned the mechanism of ADD is like you have bad dopamine receptors, so they don't hang on to your dopamine, so you're constantly looking for new sources of dopamine, and if you take a stimulant like Adderall, basically gives you a satisfying, like it gives you something that can lock in, like enough of a stimulation that goes like, okay, that's taken care of and now we can be normal and go do things. I thought maybe that was where my risk-seeking behavior came from then, was a craving for like that feeling of normalcy that I would get in high stress, high energy situations. And I wonder if there's like something like that.
Well, you described that brouhaha, that tussle,
Yes.
as a form of like meditation.
Yes.
Anybody else would
yes.
see that as chaos.
Right.
I mean, that is primal chaos.
Yes. To me, there's something like that's living, that's calm, that's present.
See, if I have a gig in front of like a couple thousand people, that I won't be nervous during the day, and then that moment right before you go on stage when you're supposed to be nervous, I can fall asleep. Yes. And I have trouble sleeping at night.
Yes.
But I start yawning and my body is tricking itself with an opposite reaction.
Right.
And I've heard comics talk about that. Jeff Garland said he has trouble sleeping, but when he does stand up, he could fall asleep on the stage right then if they asked him to.
My first jiu-jitsu coach was like this legendary. He was Carlson Gracie Sr. was like the head of the school, and I got to train with him a little bit before he passed away. And he was known in the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu family of the earlier generations. Like he was the fighting Gracie. He was the one that like they sent in to do Vale Tudo matches that were true like bare knuckle, anything goes fights, and you know, to defend this idea of jiu-jitsu. And they said that was the thing about him. He would be asleep before the fights. He'd be like taking naps, and they'd have to wake him up to go down to the ring.
That's me.
That's awesome.
Not really.
But I think it's awesome. You don't think that's so fucking cool? That's like the dream of that kind of like cool, cucumber cool, like in the face of great adversity or something that makes, you know, the common man terror.
I'm a terrible driver. If the car starts to like slide, I go into focus and I'm just in control.
That's I was no good at sports when I was a kid, and they would stick you in the outfield, and I was like, this is the worst place you could put me, because I would have to watch. I call it my pop fly rule still now. Like if I had to watch the ball coming down, the easy thing to do, I would be like, is it in front? Is it? I don't. And I would always miss it. And if I was just shortstop, you got like a line, react, boop, easy, react, throw it, and I was like. That's a surreal, because you're always like
inherently harder, the outfield.
I think it's inherently harder.
Of course it is.
They don't think it is though, because catching a pop fly is like easy.
You're staying focused during the most boring of sports, with the least waiting for that moment, and you are on guard at any moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like dogs have. You tell them to sit before a treat, and some of them will sit, and they're like, "Look, I'm sitting." But you can see they're like, they're showing you that they're sitting. They're not relaxed. And
right.
There's other dogs that are like, "This is what you want." You have to be that on guard, relaxed the whole time.
Yeah,
with no stimulation. It's
which
hard.
is exhausting.
Yeah.
Anyway,
sports, man.
What is do you have any sort of like brain things that, you know, like that thing coming back around to depression, anxiety,
sure,
something like that?
Sure. I mean, I think when I was a kid, I used to admire suffering was something I always just related to and found a process from and chased it. And I thought that's where art comes from, because it does. But it also comes from other places. And you don't have to suffer for other people all the time. That's something I've dealt with. And I think when I was a kid, I romanticized it. And until, you know, fake it till you make it, until you become it. And then you realize, you know, finding every moment possible to suffer and share that with people as real as you can is a fine cause and creates great art. It creates a great performance, but it doesn't always make the best production of Into the Woods.
Right.
There's joy and there's other things that might seem less heroic to you, Batman, but are actually necessary for a full representation of life. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Specificity was always key to me. And if you could just speak to one person that got it, then that's all that matters. But there's something to be said to bringing everyone together.
Yeah.
Like what we keep talking about. You were talking about science and faith, and it was just like, I don't necessarily believe in God. I definitely don't believe in organized religion, but there is something that's missing from science, which is that if the whole world thought one thing, a prayer, at the same time, something would happen. If the whole world held hands and looked up at the sky at the same time, something would happen. And that's everything that faith-based industries criticize science for, is for having faith. It's for them being like, no, we don't know, but we're going to try and we're going to find out. That blind faith, that just, this will work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because as far as I can tell, somebody said this, I'm sure you know who, the surest sign of life in other planets is that they haven't come to say hi to us yet.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
Because if you walked into a forest and you saw a bunch of dogs beating the shit out of each other, you wouldn't be like, hey guys, let me tell you some secrets. Let me show you the good food and where it's at. You would say, I'm going to wait until they stop ripping each other apart, and then I will engage. Because you're not ready for it. So until we stop that, and we have a lot of those tenets that are for some reason only found in religion, and put them towards science, that it's never going to work.
That...
But like, okay, want to bring it back to the pyramids? The fact that we don't know what these things are and how they are built is because they're not allowed in the hands of archaeologists and scientists, because they called them tombs. So now they're religious artifacts, and they stay that way, and they're kept by religious industries, and science isn't allowed to get in there. Obviously, the combination of both. What I'm doing is not answering your question.
No, and there's answers.
I was trying to do it in the most non-obvious way.
No, they're good. I don't know. What you said about I think that's the thing about the prayer thing. Like, if we all thought one thing at once, something would happen. I think, like, it's just, that's like the power of our thoughts and intentions are real. Like, that's, I think, what's scary about, like, looking at our, like,
any human gets an opportunity in public to make a sound with their voice without words, they claim to see God. It is like in yoga with a long, loud that's how you get there. In Southern Baptist, you're speaking in tongues. The first time you are free from words and just blah, you have never felt anything like that. In acting class, anywhere, we don't get to do that.
Right.
You don't get to just be that vessel you're talking about.
Right.
We're just, I don't know what I'm going to say next. It's just coming out.
Yeah.
What is that in relation to? I don't fucking know.
Well, I think there were two things I felt like. Well, one was like just that if we all had a general intention of wishing for things to be better, like truly, like unconsciously we would do things as a group to, like, someone said this thing about the idea of, was like, everyone loves the idea of a conspiracy theory, like a room of 7 powerful people controlling, planning to dominate third world countries, and and it's like, you don't need that, because you have this idea called capitalism, where we taught each other the important thing was always to just like make money, and capital attracts capital, and so you don't need, because the thing will collude by the very principle. Right. And that's the same thing as prayer. That's the same thing as faith. If we all, like, if you're praying to this one idea, then it follows that certain things will happen. To me, sometimes with the gun stuff in America, that's like the craziest thing about it, is like, take 5 seconds to look at what you're worshiping. Like, just think about it. Like, I said this on a podcast with Elliot, that we got to talk about gun stuff, that I was like, I think guns, this object of death, like, there's no way to escape that. Like, that's what it's for. If you want to say it's about liberty, it's for killing something that's going to prevent you from having liberty. Like, it's an object of death. That there's something very valuable in an introspection and a relationship to that, and discussing it, looking at it in yourself, and learning how to even have fun with it, how to interact with it in a way that's safe. But we've proven that we are not mature enough to have that conversation. Like, people aren't doing that. So, and instead they're unconsciously like worshiping this object of death and acting like it's a tool of liberation. And to me, that's the scariest thing about it, is like, what is that prayer that you're praying every day that's determining like your footsteps? And I think that that's very valid and real, even in our individual practical lives. You can, people like to make fun of, and I make fun of, like, manifestation principles, like The Secret and shit.
A joke.
But what I think is a joke in that stuff is how weirdly greed based they all make it. They're always that. They're always like, your life isn't, you don't have enough money. You just got to start thinking. And that's what they say. That's always, they make it as chintzy as possible, as like, cheap as possible. And that, like, but the reality of that, your sense of existence follows your belief and framing of it is just obvious, is like real.
I think the opposite of that same instinct is Tourette's. Like, I think we all have Tourette's to some degree, in so much as I've never met anyone with Tourette's syndrome that said good things. If you're uncontrollably have a tick and you're saying something, it's always negative. In fact, it's usually the worst possible thing you can think of that you can't stop from saying. And there's something to be said for its specificity.
Right.
Because sure, there's genetic and physical and chemical things that are causing all this, but we all have a fear of something, and we've all had those moments where we've been like, don't say this to that person, don't say, and that's the first thing we say. Or we go, don't trip in this dress, don't trip in this dress.
Right.
And the first thing we do, because our body cannot take living in fear of something, it will physically kill you, and it will cause it to happen because it knows better than your mind that living through something is always easier than living in fear of it. And it causes these things all the time to happen that we say, don't do that, don't, and then we do it because we have to, because living in fear of it is just too much.
That's so big, man. Living through something is better than living in fear of it.
Well, it just takes less toll. Your body knows this tension that we were talking about.
Yeah.
It's going to cripple you. It's going to give you a hump. It's going to give you a voice. It's going to give you a tick. It's going to... But just living through it, your body knows that's easier. So it'll cause it,
Completely. I just never heard it phrased that way. And I'm like, I'm going to be stuck on that for a little while, I think.
I hope I'm not being dismissive of...
No. What do you mean?
Ailments that people have and saying that
no.
But they're a part of a lot of these things that I feel like schizophrenia or hearing voices or
there's something we can relate to and
that
all
there's
of
a part. It's not just this thing yes, it is something that people are
right.
What's the word?
Experience.
But there's elements of it
that's out of their control. Yeah.
But there's parts of it we all have that we can relate to. That
completely.
We've all been there with all of that stuff.
Yeah. The other thought that I had about the prayer thing, about like the something will happen thing, is I always thought that I had this like joke in my mind. I'd do it sometimes where like you'd like see a remote control across the room and you'd be in a room with somebody else and you just like hold your hand out to it for a while. And if you just do it long enough, someone goes, what do you need? I'm like, you don't have to say anything. You just read. And eventually the person goes, do you want this? And they'll come and they'll hand it to you. Yep. And you go, Jedi mind trick, like. And the reality of like, it might not be as smooth or as quick as Yoda making it just come, but like, what's the difference? Like if we all sat and like looked up at the sky and did something, like something would happen, that there is some reality to like how we influence each other just with like thoughts and just with gestures, and that the mass of all of that will result in often like what we set out looking for.
If we were all on the same page.
Yeah.
About something.
Yeah.
And could express it. Yeah, I mean, tell me if this is just my subjective experience, but I found that often in groups of people, we all bend to the unflinching one. Like, if there's a group of six people deciding where to eat, there's usually 5 people who are pretty much up for anything and one person who has a lot of restrictions. And we all bend to that person with restrictions, and we think we're noble because of it.
Well,
or we're not noble. We think we're doing the right thing.
I think in that version, that is true. The idea that like because there's a fine line, but not a fine line. There's a definite line, but they seem related between the lowest common denominator and like taking care of those that require the most care.
Absolutely. But there's
what I think the negative version that I see often is that astonishes me is some people I will know is like, there are some people who have no problem being the problem. Like the people who will go like well, this
is what I'm talking about. It
would mortify me to like I know somebody who would park in this valet zone, and they get out of the car and the valet's like, oh, and they were like, do you have a permit for this valet? Like, no, I can park here. It's after a certain time. This is a yellow curb. I park here. And I would never do that. That would more, but some people, that person has no problem being the problem. And that shocks me. That's to me is the unflinching one that we all follow. The one who's like, I don't want to do that. I got to do this. And that shocks me.
That's, I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's parking. And I allow rage in that area of my life.
Yeah, sure.
That I relate to that guy more than the valet.
Fine.
And because he's autonomous in my world, like that's the man, the valet, and he's an autonomous thing.
See,
Sticking up for his rights.
to
But
me,
in
the
my
valet
mind-
is that's the neighborhood bar. They're there all the time. They don't have a permit. Of course not. They're just like, this is not a great neighborhood. They're living here. We all live here together. We know parking is bad. That I'm like, that's not the man. That feels like a community member and another human being. And you just are just like, I don't care. You know?
I related it in the way that when we were talking earlier, when I'm talking to someone,
Right.
if I see that they're not paying attention or they don't care, I'm mortified and I can't keep talking.
Right.
Other people don't care.
They just keep
like
going.
I cannot make 6 people all go to one place that only I'm going to be happy and enjoy myself.
Right.
I should be able to,
Right.
but I can't. And the fact that these 5 are bending for that one who has no problem sitting there eating their meal and feeling great.
Yes.
And the rest of them is like, how do you do that? And why do we support this?
Yeah, it's weird.
And why is he strong and
Yeah.
I don't know. What's right and wrong in that?
I don't know. I think, well, what's right and wrong is like, what is the unflinching person doing with it? And I think what's scary about the thought is that we don't really bend to what they're doing with it. We just bend to the fact that they're unflinching.
And
So you just hope that the unflinching one is doing something good with
but
it.
in the back of their mind, they're just like, well, if they didn't want to do it, they wouldn't do it.
Well,
Why
yeah,
would
in
you
their
ever do
mind.
something you wouldn't want to do? You
And-
came and ate there. That's on
And
you.
to some degree, they're not wrong. Like
No,
you did all go
'cause
along
we're like, we
with
did that
it.
for you.
Yeah.
You didn't have to.
Right.
Right. It's rough out there, man.
The second question related to that one was, have you ever taken any medications or anything like that?
I took Adderall for about a year, and then I moved from that into Vinase to get
Well, how
myself
old were you when
off
you did
of
that?
This was like,
I'm just curious if it was like as a kid or as an adult.
no, this was as an adult.
Okay.
And I was given antidepressants, but I never took them. I still have them in the drawer.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Now I don't take anything, but I self-medicate with marijuana.
Yeah. You stopped drinking though, too, right?
I did, but that's not, it's like saying you gave up Vietnamese food,
You don't think
which
you
is
were-
delicious.
Yeah,
just
of
wasn't
course.
very hard. Like,
Yeah, the drinking for you
Drinking for
didn't
me-
feel like medicating?
I never enjoyed it. I never enjoyed drinking.
Really?
I don't have that sweet spot
Wow.
that people have. I
That's
have.
so interesting because I associate us like having a drink like so much in the past.
I never would finish it. And people have 2 or 3 and I sip the same one. I try. I mean, I tried hard enough that I had to admit this doesn't work. I should stop. And I have no problem with substances, but alcohol. And I have, 2 brothers that are both enjoy marijuana and don't drink very much.
Yeah.
So I don't know if
Yeah, I
it's
think there's some
in the
genetic components
gene.
for sure.
And I see people who have that sweet spot where they're just like, they've had that amount of that drink that they want. And I have tried and I don't have that. I just have sober and then really tired.
Yeah. What was your, what about was the Adderall prescribed or you just like, yeah. Did it help with whatever it was for? You said you got off it, so I was curious.
In the beginning. And then it becomes the opposite of everything you're doing it for.
Really?
Like anything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think depression is often not seeing options for yourself. That's what it is. There's always options, but you're like, I can't leave this marriage. I can't stop thinking about the war. I can't stop whatever it is.
Right.
And you don't believe there is another way. You just don't see it. That's what depression is.
Right.
Because at any point you can change your life or whatever's depressed, you can fix it, but you don't feel like it and it's real. And sometimes chemicals are the things that can hit you hard enough to get you out of that. And even if it's a bad experience, it was something different. And once you see that there's another way,
Yeah.
do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Then you believe in it and that can help with depression. And I feel like it helped with that.
Was it for depression? Was it like they were saying this is like, oh, it seems like those help you get out of this depressive space?
It's hard to say. Like,
I mean, what's interesting to me about this is just that, I mean, technically, like hypothetically, technically, I don't know, that ADD is what Adderall's for ADD, right? But when I was reading about adult ADD after like being, kind of diagnosed that way and I realized that it seems like a lot of the, there's different mechanisms that have the same result. So I take a little bit of antidepressant, but also ADD. And reading about like with ADD, they talked about rejection sensitivity dysphoria and this internal emotional hyperarousal and all these things that seem to mimic a little bit like bipolar, like that my dad has and that I thought I had for years, like this. And so that's why I think it's interesting, because I kind of feel like I kind of relate to what you're saying, like things that would add to my depression were symptoms that seem to be assigned to symptoms of ADD, like this feeling like you have no options. That's very apt. I've never heard someone say that specifically that way. It's very simple and very true sounding, and that's how it would feel. Like this helplessness feels equated with like no options of my thoughts. Like I'd have a million thoughts. I'd know what to do to make my life better and to feel better, and just wouldn't do them. I just couldn't get them out the door of my head. And that ADD medication like allowed me to line up these thoughts and assign them to actions and then just start doing them. And I had another friend describe their experience with starting medication as not that it's a fix, and I'm pretty adamant about that it doesn't really do anything to get to the core problem, but they did feel it was sort of like a triage that enabled them to use tools that they'd learned. Right. Which before you knew all the tools, they just would for some reason elude you using them. It'd be like having a fucking hammer and nails and all that shit, and they're just being like, I know what I'm supposed to do with them, I just cannot. I can't cross the room. And that, so I like that thought, that analogy of that it's like a chemical. It's something that just kicks you out of your brain space.
I probably needed antidepressants, and I was just afraid of them. And I think that is just what I had settled on because I didn't want to take those. And I don't think it's the right decision at all.
No, I don't think it's necessarily the wrong one either. I think this is an important, I think it's I avoided it for so long because I have people close in my life that I've seen that I do think they're overprescribed and they turned into other versions of themselves that don't feel like their real selves. And I think anybody who's going to try some medication, you need to be doing it definitely with a doctor, but more than the doctor, because the doctor's not going to be with you every day, with yourself, like a check-in and being like, how are you feeling day to day?
Which is
how
weird.
Are the people around you responding?
Which is weird, because there was a thing called Vyvanse. I can't remember what it was, but it basically does.
Vyvanse?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's Vyvanse.
And it does what Adderall does, but without a lot of the quote-unquote...
the speedy kind of stuff?
And fun, or why people would take it recreationally.
Right.
Like, it just provides the kind of shift in perspective and energy without any of the Vicodin or any of that. And I didn't even know this was an option available until I found it on my own.
Yeah.
It was like this whole time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
And that's what I mean.
Well, that is like that. I don't know. That there's these guys on Instagram who have this physical therapy account that I follow, and they're just kind of funny and but they give really good movement stuff, and they always go, fix your shit. They're like, fix your shit. And one of the things they say a lot is nobody's gonna it's not gonna be as important to anybody else as it is to you to fix your body, to fix the things that are wrong, to learn what hurts, to learn what your problems are. And so you really have to you can go to experts and get taught and try things, but it's gonna be up to you to do the exercises and to find the things and know your spots, because you're the one with you all the time. You're the one who has to live with you. And to me, I think in the mental health field and the question, everybody loves to say it in the news all the time, we have a mental health crisis in this country, which definitely is true. Part of that is about taking into your own hands, getting the help, seeing experts who can help you, and then constantly being in check in with yourself and check in with your community and getting the response of people you trust and your day to day saying, because I don't know, a lot of psychiatry still does seem to be guessing. Well, we'll try this. Let's try this dosage. Let's try this medication. And so you have to understand these things will affect you. And because there are horror stories about people who get on stuff and then they get worse. They get in dark, And so it really does require you to be diligent and present, and then be doing all the other obvious things like exercise and drinking water and, all the things that you got to do that anyone would have to do to be well. And then, it's not just a pill.
I needed something to get me out of bed.
Yeah.
I needed a reason to get out of bed.
Right.
Now, if I would have gotten a dog around that time, if a doctor would have said,
we should do a whole episode on dogs and their effect on people, because it's too late to get into it.
Like any
but
truth,
it changed
it's just the prism that I now see everything through.
Right.
And
That's
it
really
used to
good.
be something else. But that would have been just as effective.
Right. Get a fucking dog. What's something cheesy you find inspiring?
I mean, I don't know if this answers your question, but I can watch some pretty horrific stuff and not be affected.
Mm-hmm.
But like the tiniest act of unnecessary kindness,
Yeah.
I just weep, and it's so unexpected.
Do you have a specific one in mind?
I can't. It happens so rare.
I know what you mean.
It's not the best example, but I was walking with the dog one day, and I got caught in this like situation where she was pulling me one way with the right arm, and I had poop I had to clean up with the left hand, and she was getting wrapped around a pole with the leash, and I was just kind of trapped. And this man came from across the street and came over to me, and he stuck out his hand, and I handed him the bag, and he wrapped it up, and he tied it in a bow, and he threw it in the garbage for me. And I'd never seen anything like this in my life. I went to give him $1 or something, and he refused it. I think it was a religious thing. I think he had an obligation to perform, because he kind of, when I went to give him money, it was very important that I not reward him for this. Whatever it was that drove him to do that, it was so unexpected, I'm still talking about it.
Yeah.
I got
someone who literally
picked up
shit for you
by choice.
Yeah.
I got a homeless person hit me with was pegging people with raw eggs. And I got hit with these disgusting raw eggs crossing Broadway. And I was so shocked. I took off my jacket. It smelled so horrible. I went to the nearest dry cleaner, and I told him the story. And he cleaned for free.
Yeah.
I was just like, why? Because we're like a sense of family now here, and we're all looking out for each other. That seems weird. Like, little things like that'll just destroy me. If somebody asks about the dog, they're like, how's Mom? I'm just like, even if they're manipulating me, like, it could be Putin, and he could be like, how's the dog? And I'd be like, you're saying that to fuck with me, and it's working. And you know, I see you in your eyes saying that to manipulate me, and it's still getting me, you know?
Yeah. It's a really good answer.
Okay, I hope so. Because I felt like it's something, but it wasn't quite the question.
It's never quite. I mean,
you're right. I shouldn't
you know what
care
I mean?
so much. You're right.
I think that as every question is like, there's never wrong answers to any question. Like,
sure.
Like, it's a stimulus and you get a response. Like, that's the kind of abstract thinking that I want. There's this linguist I was listening to on the Ologies podcast. That was she's talking about, like, she's a PhD in language, and people still try to say, like, African American English is like bad grammar, like it's wrong. And she's like, no, in other languages, when you study linguistics, like, no, there's grammar to African American English. Like, she's like, variation is a feature, not a problem. And that sort of thing, that idea of permission, that idea of, like, there's a million fucking ways to be, is to me like this idea, like, I don't know if I answered the question. This is Fahrenheit 451 again. There's a part where they cite, there's a part in one of the books, and it says, it's something like, it's a famous book, and I'm going to forget it, but it's like 2 + 2 is 4, and that is a very good thing. But sometimes 2 + 2 is 5, and that is also a very good thing. And it's like that. It's that.
Yeah. No, you're right, because sometimes if responses have been criticized, or if someone feels abandoned, you're like, I'm here responding to you.
Right.
You'll know what being abandoned is when there's no response. So you don't even get to criticize the response. You're getting one. They're there. Even if they care enough to tell you how much they hate you, they care enough to tell you that. They could just not. Yeah. And that's a lot of people's lives.
Right.
Abandonment is learned behavior.
That's definitely true.
And I see a lot of people that spend their lives that would jump out of a moving car to save a cat on the side of the road, but would not think twice before just destroying other humans' lives. And I don't think one is okay and the other's not. But it always blew me away because it would appear to me that like that cat that you're risking your life for on the side of the road was not abandoned there due to a cycle of cat owner abuse.
Right.
It's a human thing. Humans abandon each other and then they pass it on to animals. So
Right.
if you want to save an animal, you should be nice to the person standing next to you, because no amount of jumping on the side of the road is going to make up for that one person.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's also a feeling that like animals are more like humans have like a kind of smart to them, quote unquote, like a quote unquote smart that learns from experiences, that goes like, if they learn from an experience that's hard enough, you're never going to change them out of that one truth, that one hard truth. But like a dog, if you start like being kind to a dog, they'll be like, oh, finally. Oh, okay. This is reality now.
Well, that's the question though, because so far, and I'm new to dogs,
Yeah.
but I have yet to meet a dog that was so out of control that I didn't get the feeling like, oh, just a little bit of attention and training and love and this
Would work.
thing would work.
No, I'm saying that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
But
Dogs
is
are
that
able
applicable
to.
to humans?
I don't think it is. I think that's
See
why
that, is it true?
I don't know.
though?
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't
Is
know.
it?
No, well, I'm saying
Because this choice thing that we're
Nah,
talking
you're right,
about.
you're right.
With horses, every day I get up in the morning and I'm like, so horses, what the fuck? Why are they letting us do this to them?
Oh, but that is the great beauty of horses.
It's
Do you know
this-
this one thing I read about horses in this book? I feel like you'll. I don't know. I think about this all the time because I was going to get into the mythology thing about horses earlier. Somehow we brought it all the way back around from sparkle ponies. Like I read in this book one time, humans have predator eyes. We have binocular vision, which means because predators have eyes that face forward, and herbivores and other like prey animals have eyes on the side of their heads. And so we have predator eyes and horses don't. Horses are prey. And just the act of allowing us on their back is giving their life to us. That is so
Follow us
astonishing.
into battle. We're like, see those guns and other horses dying? Go there.
Yeah.
And they do. Every single day with this pit bull, it's a choice that it makes.
Right.
Every command, at any moment, she can decide, you know what, I'm done. And there's nothing any one of us can do.
Right.
So that person that's making you miserable laying next to you, or that person that doesn't get you or understand, it's a choice. They're there. Yeah, they're failing and they're depressed and they're miserable, but they're there.
Yeah.
That's still a choice that we
Well,
make.
I think I don't think it's my personal belief. But I do think that that is the belief, is that dogs and other animals are much more likely to adjust to a new reality because they live so presently, so that if you are kind and you are consistently like, they're like, oh, okay, cool. And that it's more likely that a human will, like, whatever trauma that they learned from a long time ago will like never really leave them. And I think some people really are less likely to believe in the possibility of change in people after a certain point.
And a lot of people put that on dogs. They have a bad experience
do.
with a pit bull and they go, oh, we can't be around big dogs.
Right.
They have and now their whole life, they live with
Which
two
is
dogs
ironic.
that can't be in the same room
Which is
together.
ironic because then you're creating that over and over for them,
course
because the
you
dog learns to know, like, oh, well, we can't be around big dogs.
Right.
So it's like, yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know. I do believe in like the power of like love and continued acceptance and like kindness, that if you just truly threw that over and over in the face of somebody who's awful, like eventually it would.
If you live it.
If you live it.
Are an example, a living example of that to that person that they can point to. My favorite thing, if I'm ever feuding with someone or there's someone I'm in a fight with and talk to mutual friends,
Yeah.
I never say anything bad about them. And I can always read the shock in the other person's face. Like, that's why they asked, so what's up with you? And
Right.
because they're expecting, because they've probably asked this question to them and they've gotten. And I watch because they believe it's whatever way they were told. And when I don't ever respond negatively, they rethink everything.
Right.
Now, maybe what I heard wasn't true because I'm not seeing any of that. And because there's nothing to gain from that.
Yeah.
It's so cheesy. You want to go back? I'll answer the cheesy question.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a theme of what we've been talking about. And no matter how right I am or justified I feel, you just choose love. Like, you just have to. Can you forgive people that don't ask for forgiveness? Can you love people that do bad things? It seems to me like if you're not choosing love, it's a hard argument. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Problems are 50-50, but if there's one person that won't talk about it,
Yeah.
that's them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They will never move forward because of them. I'm not saying it's not a 50-50 problem, but that's an end. That's not being a monk. That's not being a priest or a martyr. That's just wrong, and that's hate.
Yeah. Well, see, this is funny because the next question is, what's something dark about you?
I'm usually thinking and have to say whatever the most inappropriate thing is at any moment.
You think so? Really?
Oh yeah. Like if someone's coming to my place for the first time, I'll have to feed into the small part of them that's like worried.
Oh.
And say something along the lines of like, you just helped me roll out this plastic. And
Oh, that's very funny. I know what you mean.
Other people are very put off by that.
Yeah, I remember Dane Cook.
I've heard of him.
Yes, he had one joke that I always thought was very funny. That it wasn't even like because he didn't really do jokes. He would just do like these things, and it stuck with me because I just think about it every time somebody like comes over to my house, where he would like let them in, and then he would, as soon as he closed the door, lock it and turn around.
That's me. I have to do that.
I thought that was very funny.
I'm relating to Dane Cook.
I know it's not. There you go. Fuck you. That's so funny. I love when that happens. I just love doing that to people.
Me too.
Yeah, being like,
yep.
This like because it is. I do think if we are not allowed to see truth, no matter where it comes from, especially from a source that we find like repugnant, then the game's rigged. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That was I wrote a song about that question because I couldn't answer it.
Really?
I did.
Will you play it?
Because you sent it to me.
Will you play it when we?
I don't think so.
Okay, that's fine. If you feel like you do, I'll ask you again at the end. We'll see. I'm going to ask you again at the end.
My favorite thing in the world actually is someone at the party.
Yeah.
And there's the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, Jimmy, you got to play, Jimmy. When Jimmy is saying, no, but while tuning it.
Oh,
that's my favorite.
But that is like the tropey of like fucking guitar guy at the party.
I love that.
9 times out of 10 is just the worst. But it's a kind of worst that I can appreciate from like that you'd love, that you do truly.
Yeah, so I mean, like I couldn't speak in public while they're getting up and clearing their voice. Like,
that is very beautiful. Yes. That is, yeah. That leads into the next one. What's the last gorgeous thing you saw?
Oh, God. I saw Kevin Barnes from Of Montreal perform a solo show at the Masonic Temple in the graveyard there in Hollywood. And I enjoy his music.
Yeah.
It was a great show. At some point he said, here's a song I just wrote that I've never played before. And I knew, because usually if someone's talented, their best creation is the last one. And only if you ask them, they would be like, whatever I made last is my best thing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes. And he played this song because he writes for this band, and all the songs go through the filter of the band, and then we hear them on the record. He was playing a song live for the first time, and it was so beautiful and so cutting and so like, oh, this is the song I want to play for the girl. This is like, I wish she could hear. He's summing it all up, and it's different than anything he's played tonight, and it's different than anything he does with the band. Mm-hmm. And I knew in this moment, I'm never going to get to play this for anyone. Because there's no recording of it, and by the time he brings it to the band, it's going to be different, and it's going to have changed, and there's no recording of it, so this is it. As it's happening, I'm realizing I'm going to have to savor this and just hold on to it, because I'm never going to be able to share it, and there's probably never going to be a document of it, so I better just enjoy it. That was gorgeous.
Yeah. Go see live music. I know the last one. I don't need to check for that one. Might even be related. It was... I have this Don't Kill Yourself list, which is like I started in a very dark time in my life, and it always starts with coffee, sandwiches, and lavender soap, and it's just things that are accessible, available, and wonderful and undeniable about like to stay alive for yourself. I want you to add something to it.
The fifth movement of the Jupiter Symphony.
I don't know if I know that.
The crabs at Sam Woe's. Tracy's face. It's the beginning of There's a movie called Manhattan where the character has to make this list,
Really?
and these are the things on his list.
I didn't know. I never fucking saw that movie.
I'm not saying you should watch it,
No, but still.
but
She has the
that's my
opinions.
defensive, mocking
Yeah.
response.
Hey, this exists.
These are this guy's, but I do relate because he gives this list of things in New York that are great.
Yeah.
And then he ends with Tracy's face, the girl he's in love with. And I
that's
love
beautiful.
when, because all the wars and it's always about that one girl that fucked you up.
Right.
It's always back
Right,
to
right.
like
Oh,
something
yeah,
very
yeah.
personal.
Great Gatsby.
Shut up.
Are you familiar with this book? I'm just kidding. We've all been in love.
Oh, God. It was the best of times.
He's also the worst of times,
You think?
if you think about it.
I don't see it.
It's kind of weird.
That's not catchy.
Like on the one hand, it was the
How
best.
can they both exist? That's impossible.
That's impossible.
The person that makes you feel the best is the person that can make you feel the worst, and you can't separate them. And we spend half our lives trying to find that person that just makes us feel good and doesn't have A, B, and C. But that's fucking impossible, because if somebody makes you feel the best, now they have the ability to make you feel the worst. They can remove it.
Right.
So that's worse than not even knowing it
Yeah,
was there. And I think that's how you tell if something's true. If something is true, its opposite is true, right?
It's really good.
I love you, I hate you. You say reluctantly for some reason.
No, it's really good. I don't know. I'm so deep in this thing. I don't know.
Okay.
This is like my favorite place to be.
You're in the huddle.
Yeah. I wrote this one poem where it was 30. It's called 30 Words for Love, and there's one of them. I don't remember the words because they were nonsense words that they just used to catalog
Burlap.
Yeah, something like that. And one of them was I don't know. There's just a phrase, but it's just an image I have in my head all the time of like sometimes people are just like these bodies of water. An atoll is the one that I always think of, which I forget what that is. I just assume an ATOLL. It's like and sometimes it's nice just to like lay in someone's waters. That's how I was feeling. That was the reluctance.
And you looked at too. I wish everyone at home could see how comfortable you became.
It's true. I don't know. That's the great gift of this experience so far, is that if I get to that magical moment where I get to just like lay in somebody else's waters, and you feel that the tides breathe around you a little, and it's like really good to be in somebody else's head for a while.
That makes the other person feel pretty good.
Well,
Because they're probably thinking the same thing. Would you like to hear a song called
I would.
Wonderwall?
Yeah.
'Cause everybody loves Wonderwall.
No, I mean, oh, come on, play us a song. Play us a song.
Not so embarrassing.
Are you gonna play me a song? Okay, we got to figure out how to do this. Give me this mic. What works?
Father Demo cut a deal with the Mormons and Eugene O'Neill. Square fucked a circle. He lit up like a serpent in the round. See, I was always a little too uptight to ever pay to see the light. Every confession is a warning in this one-horse theater town. Too late to find you, I get dark so early now. Now with Adam, it's all about Eve. All that I want, the air that I breathe, I think it broke 'em. Every night, find her doing mess around. So why don't you stay and tell me how it ends? 'Cause I never wanna feel like this again. It's better to look good than to get caught looking down, casting a shadow, only seen underground. It's how West was won. We took everything but the sun. Did it please the court to hear her name out loud? See, I was always a little bright. I'll dumb it down, take it slow, get the timing right. Like Louisiana, we will not wait for you to come around. Too late to find me, I get dark so early now.
Take your microphone back. That's good. Thank you.
Welcome. This was fun, Jared.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. See you later.
I love you.
I love you too. God, I love that song. Anyway, thanks for listening to My Good Bad Brain. If you dug the episode, check us out on patreon.com/mygoodbadbrain. And you'll get some of the stuff earlier there. You get Brain Brothers earlier than everybody else. And I'm working on portraits there too. And I'm really happy how they're turning out. So I know those took a while, but it's just little old me trying to draw and make the time. So thank you if you're expecting one of those.